This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Corey Samuel. Paradise Lost by John Milton. Book 2, Part 2. The Stygian Council thus dissolved, and forth in order came the grand infernal peers. Midst came their mighty paramount, and seemed alone with antagonist of heaven, nor less than hell's dread emperor with pomp supreme, and godlike imitated state. Him round a globe of fiery seraphim enclosed, with bright emblazonry and horrent arms. Then of their session ended they bid cry, with trumpets regal sound the great result. Toward the four winds, four speedy cherubim put to their mouths the sounding alchemy, by Harold's voice explained, the hollow abyss heard far and wide, and all the host of hell with deafening shout returned them loud acclaim. Thence, more at ease, their minds and somewhat raised by false presumptuous hope, the ranged powers disband, and wandering each his several way pursues, as inclination or sad choice leads him perplexed, where he may likeliest find truce to his restless thoughts, and entertain the irksome hours, till his great chief return. Part upon the plain, or in the air sublime upon the wing, or in swift race contend, as at the Olympian games or Pythian fields. Part curb their fiery steeds, or shun the goal with rapid wheels, or fronted brigades form, as when to warn proud cities war appears waged in the troubled sky, and armies rush to battle in the clouds, before each van prick forth the airy nights, and couch their spears, till thickest legions close, with feats of arms from either end of heaven the welkin burns. Others, with vast Typhoean rage, more fell rend up both rocks and hills, and ride the air in whirlwind. Hell scarce holds the wild uproar, as when Alcides, from Oelia crowned with conquest, felt the envenomed robe, and tore through pain up by the roots the Lassian pines, and Lichus from the top of Oeta threw into the Euboic sea. Others, more mild, retreated in a silent valley, sing with notes angelical to many a harp their own heroic deeds and hapless fall by doom of battle, and complain that fate, free virtue, should enthrall to force or chance. Their song was partial, but the harmony, what could it less when spirits immortal sing, suspended hell, and took with ravishment the thronging audience. In discourse more sweet, for eloquence the soul, song charms the sense, others apart sat on a hill retired, in thoughts more elevate, and reasoned high of providence, foreknowledge, will and fate. Fixed fate, free will, foreknowledge absolute, and found no end in wandering mazes lost. Of good and evil much they argued there, of happiness and final misery, passion and apathy, and glory and shame, vain wisdom all, and false philosophy. Yet, with a pleasing sorcery, could charm pain for a while, or anguish, and excite fallacious hope, or arm the dured breast with stubborn patience as with triple steel. Another part, in squadrons and gross bands, on bold adventure to discover wide that dismal world, if any clime perhaps might yield them easier habitation, then four ways their flying march, along the banks of four infernal rivers that disgorge into the burning lake their baleful streams. Aboard Styx, the flood of deadly hate, sad Acheron of sorrow, black and deep, Cocytus, named of lamentation loud heard on the rueful stream, fierce Phlegethon, whose waves of torrent fire inflame with rage. Far off from these a slow and silent stream, Lethe, the river of oblivion, rules her watery labyrinth, whereof who drinks, forthwith his former state and being forgets both joy and grief, pleasure and pain. Beyond this flood, a frozen continent lies dark and wild, beat with perpetual storms of whirlwind and dire hail, which on firm land thaws not, but gathers heap, and ruin seems of ancient pile, all else deep snow and ice. A gulf profound as that Sabonian bog betwixt Damiata and Mount Cassius old, where armies whole have sunk, the parching air burns frore, and cold performs the effect of fire. Thither, by harpy-footed furies hailed, at certain revolutions all the damned are brought, and feel by turns the bitter change of fierce extremes, extremes by change more fierce, from beds of raging fire to starve in ice their soft ethereal warmth, and there to pine immovable, infixed and frozen round, periods of time, thence hurried back to fire. They ferry over this Lethean sound both to and fro, their sorrow to augment, and wish and struggle as they pass to reach the tempting stream, with one small drop to lose in sweet forgetfulness all pain and woe, all in one moment, and so near the brink. But fate withstands, and to oppose the tempt, Medusa with Gorgonian terror guards the ford, and of itself the water flies, all taste of living white, as once it fled the lip of Tantalus. Thus roving on, in confused march forlorn, the adventurous bands with shuddering horror pale and eyes aghast viewed first their lamentable lot, and found no rest. Through many a dark and dreary vale they passed, and many a region dolorous, o'er many a frozen, many a fiery Alp, rocks, caves, lakes, fens, bogs, dens, and shades of death, a universe of death, which God by curse created evil, for evil only good, where all life dies, death lives, and nature breeds perverse, all monstrous, all prodigious things, abominable, unutterable, and worse than fables yet have feigned or fear conceived, gorgons and hydras, and chimeras dire. Meanwhile, the adversary of God and man, Satan, with thoughts inflamed of highest design, puts on swift wings, and toward the gates of hell explores his solitary flight. Sometimes he scours the right-hand coast, sometimes the left, now shaves with a level wing the deep, then soars up to the fiery concave touring high, as when far off at sea a fleet descried hangs in the clouds, by equinoctial winds close sailing from Bengala, or the isles of Ternate and Tidor, whence merchants bring their spicy drugs. They on the trading flood through the wide Ethiopian to the Cape ply, stemming nightly toward the pole. So seemed far off the flying fiend, at last appear hell-bounds, high-reaching to the horrid roof, and thrice threefold the gates. Three folds were brass, 3 iron, 3 of adamantine rock, impenetrable, impaled with circling fire, yet unconsumed. Before the gates there sat on either side a formidable shape. The one seemed woman to the waist, and fair, but ended foul in many a scaly fold, voluminous and vast, a serpent armed with mortal sting. About her middle round a cry of hellhounds never ceased barking, with wide Cerberan mouths full loud, and rung a hideous peal. Yet, when they list, would creep, if out disturbed their noise, into her womb, and kennel there, yet there still barked and howled within unseen. Far less abhorred than these vexed Scylla bathing in the sea that parts Calabria from the hoarse Trinacrian shore, nor uglier follow the night hag, when called in secret, riding through the air she comes, lured with the smell of infant blood, to dance with Lapland witches, while the labouring moon eclipses at their charms. The other shape, if shape it might be called that shape had none, distinguishable in member, joint, or limb, or substance, might be called that shadow seemed, for each seemed either. Black it stood as night, fierce as 10 furies, terrible as hell, and shook a dreadful dart. What seemed on his head the likeness of a kingly crown had on. Satan was now at hand, and from his seat the monster moving onward came as fast, with horrid strides. Hell trembled as he strode. Th' undaunted fiend what this might be admired, not feared, God and his Son except, created thing naught valued he, nor shunned, and with disdainful look thus first began. Whence and what art thou, execrable shape, that darest through grim and terrible advance thy miscreated front athwart my way to yonder gates? Through them I mean to pass, that be assured, without leave asked of thee. Retire, or taste thy folly, and learn by proof, hellborn, not to contend with spirits of heaven. To whom the goblin, full of wrath, replied, "Art thou that traitor angel? Art thou he who first broke peace in heaven and faith, till then unbroken, and in proud rebellious arms drew after him the third part of heaven's sons, conjured against the highest, for which both thou and they, outcast from God, are here condemned to waste eternal days in woe and pain? And reckonest thou thyself with spirits of heaven, hell-doomed, and breathest defiance here in scorn where I reign king, and to enrage thee more, thy king and lord? Back to thy punishment, false fugitive, and to thy speed add wings, lest with a whip of scorpions I pursue thy lingering, or with one stroke of this dark, strange horror seize thee, and pangs unfelt before." So spake the grisly terror, and in shape so speaking and so threatening, grew tenfold more dreadful and deform. On th' other side, incensed with indignation, Satan stood unterrified, and like a comet burned, that fires the length of Ophiuchus, huge in th' Arctic sky, and from his horrid hair shakes pestilence and war. Each at the head levelled his deadly aim, their fatal hands no second stroke intend, and such a frown each cast at th' other, as when two black clouds with heaven's artillery fraught come rattling on over the Caspian, then stand front to front hovering a space, till winds the signal blow to join their dark encounter in mid-air. So frowned the mighty combatants, that hell grew darker at their frowning, so matched they stood. For never but once more was either like to meet so great a foe, and now great deeds had been achieved, whereof all hell had rung, had not the snaky sorceress that sat fast by Hell-gate, and kept the fatal key, risen, and with hideous outcry rushed between. "O father, what intends thy hand," she cried, "against thy only son? What fury, O son, possesses thee to bend that mortal dart against thy father's head? And know'st for whom? For him who sits above and laughs the while at thee ordains his drudge, to execute whate'er his wrath, which he calls justice, bids his wrath which one day will destroy ye both." She spake, and at her words the hellish pest forbore. Then these to her Satan returned. "So strange thy outcry, and thy words so strange thou interposest, that by my sudden hand prevented spares to tell thee yet by deeds what it intends, till first I know of thee, what thing thou art, thus double formed, and why in this internal vale first met thou callest me father, and that phantasm call'st my son. I know thee not, nor ever saw, till now, sight more detestable than him and thee." To whom thus the portress of Hell-gate replied, "Hast thou forgot me then, and do I seem now in thine eye so foul, once deemed so fair in heaven, when at th' assembly and in sight of all the seraphim with thee combined in bold conspiracy against heaven's king, all on a sudden miserable pain surprised thee, dimmed thine eyes, and dizzy swum in darkness, while thy head flames thick and fast drew forth, till on the left side opening wide, likest thee in shape and countenance bright, then shining heavenly fair, a goddess armed out of thy head I sprung. Amazement seized all the host of heaven, back they recoiled afraid at first, and called me sin, and for a sign portentous held me, but familiar grown I pleased, and with attractive graces won the most diverse, thee chiefly, who full oft thyself in me thy perfect image viewing becamest enamoured, and such joy thou took'st with me in secret, that my womb conceived a growing burden. Meanwhile war arose, and fields were fought in heaven, wherein remained, for what could else, to our almighty foe clear victory, to our part loss and rout through all the empyrean. Down they fell, driven headlong from the pitch of heaven, down into this deep, and in the general fall I also, at which time this powerful key into my hand was given, with charge to keep these gates for ever shut, which none can pass without my opening. Pensive, here I sat alone, but long I sat not, till my womb, pregnant by thee, and now excessive grown, prodigious motion felt, and rueful throes. At last, this odious offspring whom thou seest, thine own begotten, breaking violent way, tore through my entrails, that with fear and pain distorted, all my nether shape thus grew transformed. But he, my inbred enemy, forth issued, brandishing his fatal dart, made to destroy. I fled, and cried out death. Hell trembled at the hideous name, and sighed from all her caves, and back resounded death. I fled, but he pursued, though more it seems inflamed with lust than rage, and swift afar me overtook his mother all dismayed, and in embraces forcible and foul engendering with me, of that rape begot these yelling monsters, that with ceaseless cry surround me, as thou sawest, hourly conceived and hourly born, with sorrow infinite to me, for when they list into the womb that bred them they return, and howl and gnaw my bowels their repast. Then bursting forth, afresh with conscious terrors vex me round, that rest or intermission none I find. Before mine eyes in opposition sits grim death, my son and foe, who sets them on, and me his parent would full soon devour for want of other prey, but that he knows his end with mine involved, and knows that I should prove a bitter morsel, and his bane, whenever that shall be. So fate pronounced. But thou, O father, I forewarn thee, shun his deadly arrow, neither vainly hope to be invulnerable in those bright arms, though tempered heavenly, for that mortal dint, save he who reigns above, none can resist. She finished, and the subtle fiend his lore soon learned, now milder, and thus answered smooth, Dear daughter, since thou claim'st me for thy sire, and my fair son here show'st me the dear pledge of dalliance had with thee in heaven, and joys then sweet, now sad to mention, through dire change befallen us unforeseen, unthought of, know I come no enemy, but to set free from out this dark and dismal house of pain, both him and thee, and all the heavenly host of spirits, that in our just pretences armed, fell with us from on high. From them I go this uncouth errand soul, and one for all myself expose, with lonely steps to tread th' unfounded deep, and through the void immense, to search, with wandering quest, a place foretold should be, and by concurring signs, ere now created vast and round, a place of bliss, in the purlieus of heaven, and therein placed a race of upstart creatures, to supply perhaps our vacant room, though more removed, lest heaven, surcharged with potent multitude, might hap to move new broils. Be this or out, then this more secret now designed, I haste to know, and this once known shall soon return, and bring ye to the place where thou and death shall dwell at ease, and up and down unseen wing silently the buxom air, embalmed with odours. There ye shall be fed and filled immeasurably, all things shall be your prey. He ceased, for both seemed highly pleased, and death grinned horrible a ghastly smile, to hear his famine should be filled, and blessed is more destined to that good hour. No less rejoiced his mother bad, and thus bespake her sire. The key of this infernal pit by due, and by command of heaven's all-powerful king, I keep, by him forbidden to unlock these adamantine gates. Against all force death ready stands to interpose his dart, fearless to be o'ermatched by living might. But what owe I to his commands above, who hates me, and hath hither thrust me down into this gloom of Tartarus profound, to sit in hateful office here confined, inhabitant of heaven, and heavenly born, here, in perpetual agony and pain, with terrors and with clamours compassed round of mine own brood, that on my bowels feed. Thou art my father, thou my author, thou my being gav'st me. Whom should I obey but thee, whom follow? Thou wilt bring me soon to that new world of light and bliss, among the gods who live at ease, where I shall reign at thy right hand voluptuous, as beseems thy daughter and thy darling, without end. Thus saying, from her side the fatal key, sad instrument of all our woe, she took, and towards the gate ruling her bestial train, forthwith the huge portcullis high up drew, which but herself not all the Stygian powers could once have moved. Then in the keyhole turns th' intricate wards, and every bolt and bar of massy iron or solid rock with ease unfastens. On a sudden open fly, with impetuous recoil and jarring sound, th' infernal doors, and on their hinges great harsh thunder, that the lowest bottom shook of Erebus. She opened, but to shut excelled her power. The gates wide open stood, that with extended wings a bannered host under spread ensigns marching might pass through, with horse and chariots ranked in loose array. So wide they stood, and like a furnace mouth cast forth redounding smoke and ruddy flame. Before their eyes in sudden view appear the secrets of the hoary deep, a dark, illimitable ocean without bound, without dimension, where length, breadth, and height, and time and place are lost, where eldest night and chaos, ancestors of nature, hold eternal anarchy, amidst the noise of endless wars, and by confusion stand. For hot, cold, moist, and dry, 4 champions fierce strive here for mastery, and to battle bring their embryon atoms, they around the flag of each his faction, in their several clans, light-armed or heavy, sharp, smooth, swift or slow, swarm populous, unnumbered as the sands of Barca or Cyrene's torrid soil, levied to side with warring winds, and poise their lighter wings. To whom these most adhere, he rules a moment. Chaos umpire sits, and by decision more embroils the fray by which he reigns. Next him high arbiter Chance governs all. Into this wild abyss, the womb of nature, and perhaps her grave, of neither sea, nor shore, nor air, nor fire, but all these, in their pregnant causes mixed confusedly, and which thus must ever fight, unless th' Almighty Maker then ordain his dark materials to create more worlds. Into this wild abyss the wary fiend stood on the brink of hell and looked awhile, pondering his voyage, for no narrow frith he had to cross, nor was his ear less peeled with noises loud and ruinous, compare great things with small, than when Bellona storms, with all her battering engines bent to raise some capital city, or less than if this frame of heaven were falling, and these elements in mutiny had from her axle torn the steadfast earth. At last his sailboard veins he spreads for flight, and in the surging smoke uplifted spurns the ground, thence many a league, as in a cloudy chair ascending rides audacious, but that seat soon failing, meets a vast vacuity. All unawares, fluttering his pennons vain, plumb down he drops, 10,000 fathom deep, and to this hour down had been falling, had not, by ill chance, the strong rebuff of some tumultuous cloud, instinct with fire and nitre, hurried him as many miles aloft. That fury stayed, quenched in a boggy Syrtis, neither sea nor good dry land. Nigh foundered on he fares, treading the crude consistence, half on foot, half flying, behoves him now both oar and sail. As when a griffin through the wilderness with winged course o'er hill or moory dale pursues the Arimaspian, who by stealth had, from his wakeful custody, purloined the guarded gold, so eagerly the fiend, o'er bog or steep, through strait, rough, dense, or rare, with head, hands, wings, or feet pursues his way, and swims, or sinks, or wades, or creeps, or flies. At length, a universal hubbub wild, of stunning sounds and voices all confused, borne through the hollow dark, assaults his ear with loudest vehemence. Thither he plies, undaunted to meet there whatever power or spirit of the nethermost abyss might in that noise reside, of whom to ask which way the nearest coast of darkness lies bordering on light, when straight behold the throne of chaos, and his dark pavilion spread wide on a wasteful deep. With him enthroned sat sable-vested Night, eldest of things, the consort of his reign, and by them stood Orcus and Ades, and the dreaded name of Demogorgon, Rumour next, and Chance, and Tumult, and Confusion all embroiled, and Discord with 1,000 various mouths. To whom Satan, turning boldly, thus: Ye powers and spirits of this nethermost abyss, chaos and ancient night, I come no spy, with purpose to explore or to disturb the secrets of your realm, but by constraint wandering this darksome desert, as my way lies through your spacious empire up to light. Alone, and without guide, half lost, I seek what readiest path leads where your gloomy bounds confine with heaven, or if some other place from your dominion won, the ethereal king possesses lately, thither to arrive I travel this profound, direct my course. Directed, no mean recompense it brings to your behoof, if I, that region lost, all usurpation thus expelled, reduce to her original darkness and your sway, which is my present journey, and once more erect the standard there of ancient night. Yours be the advantage all, mine the revenge. Thus Satan, and him thus the Anak old, with faltering speech and visage incomposed, answered, I know thee, stranger, who thou art, that mighty leading angel, who of late made head against heaven's king, though overthrown. I saw and heard, for such a numerous host fled not in silence through the frighted deep, with ruin upon ruin, rout on rout, confusion worse confounded, and heaven gates poured out by millions her victorious bands pursuing. I, upon my frontiers here keep residence, if all I can will serve. That little which is left so to defend, encroached on still through our intestine broils, weakening the sceptre of old night. First hell, your dungeon stretching far and wide beneath, now lately heaven and earth another world hung o'er my realm, linked in a golden chain, to that side heaven from whence your legions fell. If that way be your walk, you have not far, so much the nearer danger. Go and speed. Havoc and spoil and ruin are my gain. He ceased, and Satan stayed not to reply, but glad now that his sea should find a shore, with fresh alacrity and force renewed, springs upward like a pyramid of fire into the wild expanse, and through the shock of fighting elements, on all sides round environed wins his way, harder beset and more endangered than when Argo passed through Bosphorus, betwixt the justling rocks, or when Ulysses on the larboard shunned Charybdis, and by th'other whirlpool steered. So he, with difficulty and labour hard, moved on. With difficulty and labour but he once passed, soon after when man fell, strange alteration. Sin and death amain following his track, such was the will of heaven, paved after him a broad and beaten way, over the dark abyss, whose boiling gulf tamely endured a bridge of wondrous length, from hell continued, reaching the utmost orb of this frail world, by which the spirits perverse, with easy intercourse, pass to and fro to tempt or punish mortals, except whom God and good angels guard by special grace. But now at last the sacred influence of light appears, and from the walls of heaven shoots far into the bosom of dim night a glimmering dawn. Here nature first begins her farthest verge, and chaos to retire, as from her outmost works a broken foe, with tumult less, and with less hostile din. That Satan, with less toil, and now with ease, wafts on the calmer wave by dubious light, and like a weather-beaten vessel holds gladly the port, though shrouds and tackle torn, or in the emptier waste, resembling air, weighs his spread wings, at leisure to behold far off the imperial heaven, extended wide in circuit, undetermined square or round, with opal towers and battlements adorned of living sapphire, once his native seat. And fast by hanging in a golden chain, this pendant world, in bigness as a star of smallest magnitude close by the moon, thither, full fraught with mischievous revenge, accursed, and in a cursed hour he hies. The end of the second part of the second book.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Greg Brown. Paradise Lost by John Milton. Book 3, Part 1. Hail, holy light, offspring of heaven's firstborn. For of the eternal, co-eternal beam may I express the unblamed, since God is light, and never but in unapproached light dwelt from eternity. dwelt then in thee, bright effluence of bright essence increate? Or hearest thou rather pure ethereal stream, whose fountain who shall tell? Before the sun, before the heavens thou wert, and at the voice of God, as with a mantle didst invest the rising world of waters dark and deep, one from the void and formless infinite. Thee I revisit now with bolder wing, escaped the Stygian pool, though long detained in that obscure sojourn, while in my flight through utter and through middle darkness, borne with other notes than to the Orphean lyre, I sung of chaos and eternal night, taught by the heavenly muse to venture down the dark descent, and up to reascend, though hard and rare. Thee I revisit safe, and feel thy sovereign vital lamp, but thou revisitst not these eyes, that roll in vain to find thy piercing ray, and find no dawn. So thick a drop serene hath quenched their orbs, or dim suffusion veiled. Yet not the more cease I to wander where the muses haunt clear spring, or shady grove, or sunny hill, smit with the love of sacred song. But chief thee, Zion, and the flowery brooks beneath that wash thy hallowed feet, and warbling flow nightly I visit. Nor sometimes forget those other two equal with me in fate, so were I equal with them in renown, blind Thamyris and blind Maeonides, and Tiresias and Phineus, prophets old. Then feed on thoughts that voluntary move harmonious numbers, as the wakeful bird sings darkly, and in shadiest covert hid tunes her nocturnal note. Thus with the year seasons return, but not to me returns day, or the sweet approach of even or morn, or sight of vernal bloom, or summer's rose, or flocks, or herds, or human face divine. But cloud instead, and ever-during dark surrounds me, from the cheerful ways of men cut off, and for the book of knowledge fair, presented with a universal blank of nature's works, to me expunged and raised, and wisdom at one entrance quite shut out. So much the rather thou, celestial light, shine inward, and the mind through all her powers irradiate. There plant eyes, all mist from thence purge and disperse, that I may see and tell of things invisible to mortal sight. Now had the Almighty Father from above, from the pure empyrean where he sits, high throned above all height, bent down his eye, his own works and their works at once to view. About him all the sanctities of heaven stood thick as stars, and from his sight received beatitude past utterance. On his right, the radiant image of his glory sat, his only Son. On earth he first beheld our two first parents, yet the only two of mankind, in the happy garden place, reaping immortal fruits of joy and love, uninterrupted joy, unrivaled love in blissful solitude. He then surveyed hell and the gulf between, and Satan there coasting the wall of heaven on this side night in the dun air sublime, and ready now to stoop with wearied wings and willing feet on the bare outside of this world, that seemed firm land embosomed without firmament, uncertain which, in ocean or in air. Him God beholding from his prospect high, wherein past, present, future he beholds, thus to his only Son foreseeing spake. Only begotten Son, seest thou what rage transports our adversary, whom no bounds prescribe, no bars of hell, nor all the chains heaped on him there, nor yet the main abyss wide interrupt can hold. So bent he seems on desperate revenge, that shall redound upon his own rebellious head. And now through all restraint broke loose, he wings his way not far off heaven in the precincts of life, directly towards the new created world, and man there placed, with purpose to essay if him by force he can destroy, or worse, by some false guile pervert, and shall pervert, for man will hearken to his glozing lies, and easily transgress the sole command, the sole pledge of his obedience. So will fall he and his faithless progeny. Whose fault? Whose but his own? In great, he had of me all he could have. I made him just and right, sufficient to have stood, though free to fall. Such I created all the ethereal powers and spirits, both them who stood and them who failed. Freely they stood who stood, and fell who fell. Not free, what proof could they have given sincere of true allegiance, constant faith or love, where only what they needs must do appeared, not what they would? What praise could they receive? What pleasure I from such obedience paid, when will and reason also is choice, useless and vain, of freedom both despoiled, made passive both, had served necessity, not me. They therefore as to right belonged, so were created, nor can justly accuse their maker, or their making, or their fate, as if predestination overruled their will, disposed by absolute decree or high foreknowledge. They themselves decreed their own revolt, not I. If I foreknew, foreknowledge had no influence on their fall, which had no less proved certain unforeknown. So without least impulse or shadow of fate, or aught by me immutably foreseen, they trespass, authors to themselves in all both what they judge and what they choose, for so I formed them free, and free they must remain till they enthrall themselves. I else must change their nature, and revoke the high decree unchangeable, eternal, which ordained their freedom. They themselves ordained their fall. The first sort by their own suggestion fell, self-tempted, self-depraved. Man falls deceived by the other first. Man therefore shall find grace, the other none. In mercy and justice both, through heaven and earth, so shall my glory excel. But mercy first and last shall brightest shine. Thus, while God spake, ambrosial fragrance filled all heaven, and in the blessed Spirit's elect, sense of new joy ineffable diffused. Beyond compare, the Son of God was seen most glorious. In him all his Father shone substantially expressed, and in his face divine compassion visibly appeared, love without end, and without measure grace, which uttering thus, he to his Father spake. O Father, gracious was that word which closed thy sovereign sentence, that man should find grace, for which both heaven and earth shall high extol thy praises with the innumerable sound of hymns and sacred songs, wherewith thy throne encompassed shall resound thee ever blessed. For should man finally be lost, should man, thy creature late so loved, thy youngest son fall circumvented thus by fraud, though joined with his own folly, that be from thee far, that far be from thee, Father, who art judge of all things made, and judgest only right. Or shall the adversary thus obtain his end, and frustrate thine? Shall he fulfill his malice, and thy goodness bring to naught? Or proud return, though to his heavier doom, yet with revenge accomplished, and to hell draw after him the whole race of mankind, by him corrupted? Or wilt thou thyself abolish thy creation, and unmake for him what for thy glory thou hast made? So should thy goodness and thy greatness both be questioned and blasphemed without defense. To whom the great Creator thus replied, O Son, in whom my soul hath chief delight, Son of my bosom, Son who art alone my word, my wisdom, and effectual might, all hast thou spoken as my thoughts are, all as my eternal purpose hath decreed. Man shall not quite be lost, but saved who will, yet not of will in him, but grace in me freely vouchsafe. Once more I will renew his lapsed powers, though forfeit and enthralled by sin to foul exorbitant desires. Upheld by me, yet once more he shall stand on even ground against his mortal foe. By me upheld, that he may know how frail his fallen condition is, and to me owe all his deliverance, and to none but me. Some I have chosen of peculiar grace, elect above the rest, so is my will, The rest shall hear me call, and oft be warned their sinful state, and to appease betimes the incensed deity, while offered grace invites. For I will clear their senses dark what may suffice, and soften stony hearts to pray, repent, and bring obedience due. To prayer, repentance, and obedience due, though but endeavored with sincere intent, mine ear shall not be slow, mine eye not shut. And I will place within them as a guide my umpire conscience, whom if they will hear, light after light well used they shall attain, and to the end persisting, safe arrive. This my long sufferance and my day of grace they who neglect and scorn shall never taste. But hard be hardened, blind be blinded more, that they may stumble on and deeply fall. And none but such from mercy I exclude. But yet all is not done. Man disobeying, disloyal breaks his fealty, and sins against the high supremacy of heaven, affecting Godhead, and so losing all to expiate his treason hath not left, but to destruction sacred and devote he with his whole posterity must die. Die he, or justice must. Unless for him some other able and as willing pay the rigid satisfaction, death for death. Say, heavenly powers, where shall we find such love? Which of ye will be mortal to redeem man's mortal crime, and just the unjust to save? Dwells in all heaven charity so dear? He asked, but all the heavenly choir stood mute, and silence was in heaven. On man's behalf, patron or intercessor none appeared, much less that durst upon his own head draw the deadly forfeiture, and ransom set. And now without redemption all mankind must have been lost, adjudged to death and hell by doom severe, had not the Son of God, in whom the fullness dwells of love divine, his dearest mediation thus renewed. Father, thy word is past, man shall find grace, and shall grace not find means that finds her way the speediest of thy winged messengers, to visit all thy creatures, and to all comes unprevented, unimplored, unsought, happy for man so coming. He her aid can never seek, once dead in sins and lost. Atonement for himself or offering meet, indebted and undone, hath none to bring. Behold me then, me for him, life for life I offer. On me let thine anger fall. Account me man. I for his sake will leave thy bosom, and this glory next to thee freely put off, and for him lastly die well pleased. On me let death wreak all his rage. Under his gloomy power I shall not long lie vanquished. Thou hast given me to possess life in myself forever. By thee I live, though now to death I yield, and am his due all that of me can die. Yet that debt paid, thou wilt not leave me in the loathsome grave his prey, nor suffer my unspotted soul forever with corruption there to dwell. But I shall rise victorious, and subdue my vanquisher, spoiled of his vaunted spoil. Death his death's wound shall then receive, and stoop inglorious, of his mortal sting disarmed. I through the ample air in triumph high shall lead hell captive, maugre hell, and show the powers of darkness bound. Thou at the sight pleased, out of heaven shalt look down and smile, while by thee raised I ruin all my foes, death last, and with his carcass glut the grave. Then with the multitude of my redeemed shall enter heaven long absent, and return, Father, to see thy face, wherein no cloud of anger shall remain, but peace assured, and reconcilement. Wrath shall be no more thenceforth, but in thy presence joy entire. His words here ended, but his meek aspect silent yet spake, and breathed immortal love to mortal men, above which only shone filial obedience. As a sacrifice glad to be offered, he attends the will of his great Father. Admiration seized all heaven, what this might mean, and whither tend wondering. But soon the Almighty thus replied, O thou in heaven and earth, the only peace found out for mankind under wrath, O thou, my sole complacence, well thou knowest how dear to me are all my works, nor man the least, though last created. that for him I spared thee from my bosom and right hand, to save, by losing thee a while, the whole race lost. Thou therefore, whom thou only canst redeem, their nature also to thy nature join, and be thyself man among men on earth, made flesh, when time shall be, of virgin seed by wondrous birth. Be thou in Adam's womb, the head of all mankind, though Adam's son. As in him perish all men, so in thee, as from a second root, shall be restored as many as are restored, without thee none. His crime makes guilty all his sons. Thy merit imputed shall absolve them who renounce their own both righteous and unrighteous deeds, and live in thee transplanted, and from thee receive new life. So man, as is most just, shall satisfy for man, be judged and die, and dying rise, and rising with him raise his brethren, ransomed with his own dear life. So heavenly love shall outdo hellish hate, giving to death and dying to redeem, so dearly to redeem what hellish hate so easily destroyed, and still destroys in those who, when they may, accept not grace. Nor shalt thou, by descending to assume man's nature, lessen or degrade thine own, because thou hast, though throned in highest bliss equal to God and equally enjoying God-like fruition, quitted all to save a world from utter loss, and hast been found by merit more than birthright Son of God, found worthiest to be so by being good, far more than great or high, because in thee love hath abounded more than glory abounds. Therefore thy humiliation shall exalt with thee thy manhood also to this throne. Here shalt thou sit incarnate, here shalt reign both God and man, Son both of God and man, anointed universal King. All power I give thee, reign forever, and assume thy merits. Under thee as head supreme, thrones, princedoms, powers, dominions I reduce. All knees to thee shall bow, of them that bide in heaven or earth, or under earth in hell. When thou, attended gloriously from heaven, shalt in the sky appear, and from thee send the summoning archangels to proclaim thy dread tribunal, forthwith from all winds the living, and forthwith the sighted dead of all past ages to the general doom shall hasten. Such a peal shall rouse their sleep. Then all thy saints assembled, thou shalt judge bad men and angels. They arraigned shall sink beneath thy sentence. Hell, her numbers full, thenceforth shall be forever shut. Meanwhile the world shall burn, and from her ashes spring new heaven and earth, wherein the just shall dwell, and after all their tribulations long, see golden days, fruitful of golden deeds, with joy and love triumphing, and fair truth. Then thou thy regal scepter shalt lay by, for regal scepter then no more shall need. God shall be all in all. But all ye gods, adore him, who to compass all this dies. Adore the Son, and honor him as me. End of Book 3, Part 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Greg Bryan. Paradise Lost by John Milton, Book 3, Part 2. No sooner had the Almighty ceased, but all the multitude of angels, with a shout loud as from numbers without number, sweet as from blessed voices, uttering joy, heaven rung with jubilee, and loud hosannas filled the eternal regions. Lowly reverent towards either throne they bow, and to the ground with solemn adoration down they cast their crowns inwove with amaranth and gold, immortal amaranth, a flower which once in paradise, fast by the tree of life began to bloom, but soon for man's offense to heaven removed, where first it grew, there grows, and flowers aloft, shading the fount of life, and where the river of bliss through midst of heaven rolls o'er Elysian flowers her amber stream. With these that never fade the spirits elect bind their resplendent locks enwreathed with beams. now in loose garlands thick thrown off. The bright pavement that like a sea of jasper shone empurpled with celestial roses smiled. Then, crowned again, their golden harps they took, harps ever tuned, that glittering by their side like quivers hung, and with preamble sweet of charming symphony they introduced their sacred song, and wakened raptures high. No voice exempt, no voice but well could join melodious part, such concord is in heaven. Thee, Father, first they sung omnipotent, immutable, immortal, infinite, eternal King, Thee, author of all being, fountain of light, Thyself invisible amidst the glorious brightness where Thou sittst, throned inaccessible. But when Thou shadest the full blaze of Thy beams, and through a cloud drawn round about Thee like a radiant shrine, dark with excessive bright Thy skirts appear, yet dazzle heaven, that brightest seraphim approach not, but with both wings veil their eyes. Thee next they sang of all creation first, begotten Son, divine similitude, in whose conspicuous countenance, without cloud made visible, the Almighty Father shines, whom else no creature can behold. On Thee impressed the effulgence of His glory abides, transfused on Thee His ample spirit rests. He, heaven of heavens, and all the powers therein, by Thee created, and by Thee threw down the aspiring dominations. Thou that day Thy Father's dreadful thunder didst not spare, nor stop Thy flaming chariot wheels, that shook heaven's everlasting frame, while o'er the necks Thou drovest of warring angels disarrayed. Back from pursuit Thy powers with loud acclaim Thee only extolled, Son of Thy Father's might, to execute fierce vengeance on His foes, not so on man. Him through their malice fallen, Father of mercy and grace, Thou didst not doom so strictly, but much more to pity incline. No sooner did Thy dear and only Son perceive Thee purposed not to doom frail man so strictly, but much more to pity inclined, He to appease Thy wrath, and end the strife of mercy and justice in Thy face discerned, regardless of the bliss wherein He sat second to Thee, offered Himself to die for man's offense. O unexampled love, love nowhere to be found less than divine. Hail, Son of God, Savior of men, Thy name shall be the copious matter of my song henceforth, and never shall my harp Thy praise forget, nor from Thy Father's praise disjoined. Thus they in heaven, above the starry sphere, their happy hours in joy and hymning spent. Meanwhile, upon the firm opacous globe of this round world, whose first convex divides the luminous inferior orbs, enclosed from chaos and the inroad of darkness old, Satan alighted walks. A globe far off it seemed, now seems a boundless continent, dark, waste, and wild, under the frown of night starless exposed, and ever-threatening storms of chaos blustering round, inclement sky, save on that side which from the wall of heaven, though distant far, some small reflection gains of glimmering air less vexed with tempest loud. Here walked the fiend at large in spacious field, as when a vulture on Emmaus bred, whose snowy ridge the roving Tartar bounds, dislodging from a region scarce of prey, to gorge the flesh of lambs or yeanling kids on hills where flocks are fed, flies toward the springs of Ganges or Hydaspes, Indian streams, but in his way lights on the barren plains of Sarikani, where Chineses drive with sails and wind their tiny wagons light. So on this windy sea of land, the fiend walked up and down alone, bent on his prey. Alone, for other creature in this place, living or lifeless, to be found was none. None yet. But store hereafter from the earth, up hither like aerial vapors flew of all things transitory and vain, when sin with vanity had filled the works of men. Both all things vain, and all who in vain things built their fond hopes of glory or lasting fame, or happiness in this or the other life. All who have their reward on earth, the fruits of painful superstition and blind zeal, not seeking but the praise of men, here find fit retribution, empty as their deeds. all the unaccomplished works of nature's hand, abortive, monstrous, or unkindly mixed, dissolved on earth, fleet hither, and in vain till final dissolution, wander here, not in the neighboring moon as some have dreamed. Those argent fields more likely habitants translated saints, or middle spirits hold betwixt the angelical and humankind. Hither, of ill-joined sons and daughters born first from the ancient world, those giants came, with many a vain exploit, though then renowned. The builders next of Babel on the plain of Sinear, and still with vain design new Babels, had they wherewithal, would build. Others came single. He who to be deemed a god leaped fondly into Atma flames, Empedocles, and he who to enjoy Plato's Elysium leaped into the sea, Cleombrotus, and many more too long, embryos and idiots, eremites and friars, white, black, and gray, with all their trumpery. Here pilgrims roam, that strayed so far to seek in Golgotha him dead, who lives in heaven. And they who to be sure of paradise, dying put on the weeds of Dominic, or in Franciscan think to pass disguised. They pass the planets 7, and pass the fixed, and that crystalline sphere whose balance weighs the trepidation talked, and that first moved. And now St. Peter at heaven's wicket seems to wait them with his keys, and now at foot of heaven's ascent they lift their feet, when lo, a violent cross-wind from either coast blows them transverse 10,000 leagues awry into the devious air. Then might ye see cowls, hoods, and habits with their wearers tossed and fluttered into rags. Then relics, beads, indulgences, dispenses, pardons, bulls, the sport of winds. All these upwhirled aloft, fly o'er the backside of the world far off into a limbo large and broad, since called the paradise of fools, to few unknown long after, now unpeopled and untrod. All this dark globe the fiend found as he passed, and long he wandered, till at last a gleam of dawning light turned thitherward in haste his travelled steps. Far distant he descries, ascending by degrees magnificent, up to the wall of heaven a structure high, at top whereof, but far more rich appeared the work as of a kingly palace gate, with frontispiece of diamond and gold embellished. Thick with sparkling orient gems the portal shone, inimitable on earth by model or by shading pencil drawn. The stairs were such as whereon Jacob saw angels ascending and descending, bands of guardians bright, when he from Esau fled to Paddan Aram in the field of Luz, dreaming by night under the open sky, and waking cried, "This is the gate of heaven." Each stair mysteriously was met, nor stood there always, but drawn up to heaven sometimes viewless, and underneath a bright sea flowed of jasper, or of liquid pearl, whereon who after came from earth, sailing arrived, wafted by angels, or flew o'er the lake, wrapped in a chariot drawn by fiery steeds. The stairs were then let down, whether to dare the fiend by easy ascent, or aggravate his sad exclusion from the doors of bliss, direct against which opened from beneath, just o'er the blissful seat of paradise, a passage down to the earth, a passage wide, wider by far than that of after times over Mount Zion, and though that were large, over the promised land to God so dear, by which to visit oft those happy tribes. On high behests his angels to and fro passed frequent, and his eye with choice regard from Paneas, the fount of Jordan's flood, to Beer Saba, where the Holy Land borders on Egypt and the Arabian shore. So wide the opening seemed, where bounds were set to darkness such as bound the ocean with. Satan from hence now on the lower stair that scaled by steps of gold to heaven gate, looks down with wonder at the sudden view of all this world at once, as when a scout through dark and desert ways with peril gone all night, at last by break of cheerful dawn obtains the brow of some high climbing hill, which to his eye discovers unaware the goodly prospect of some foreign land first seen, or some renowned metropolis with glistering spires and pinnacles adorned, which now the rising sun gilds with his beams. Such wonder seized, though after heaven seen the spirit malign. But much more envy seized at sight of all this world beheld so fair. Round he surveys, and well might, where he stood so high above the circling canopy of night's extended shade. From eastern point of Libra to the fleecy star that bears Andromeda far off Atlantic seas beyond the horizon. Then from pole to pole he views in breadth, and without longer pause, down right into the world's first region throws his flight precipitate, and winds with ease through the pure marble air his oblique way amongst innumerable stars that shone stars distant, but nigh-hand seemed other worlds, or other worlds they seemed, or happy isles, like those Hesperian gardens famed of old, fortunate fields, and groves and flowery vales, thrice happy isles. But who dwelt happy there he stayed not to inquire. Above them all the golden sun in splendor likest heaven allured his eye. Thither his course he bends through the calm firmament, but up or down by center or eccentric, hard to tell, or longitude, where the great luminary aloof the vulgar constellations thick, that from his lordly eye keep distance due, dispenses light from far. They, as they move their starry dance in numbers that compute days, months, and years, towards his all-cheering lamp, turn swift their various motions, or are turned by his magnetic beam that gently warms the universe, and to each inward part with gentle penetration, though unseen, shoots invisible virtue even to the deep. So wondrously was set his station bright. There lands the fiend, a spot like which perhaps astronomer in the sun's lucent orb through his glazed optic tube yet never saw. The place he found beyond expression bright, compared with aught on earth, metal or stone. Not all parts like, but all alike informed with radiant light, as glowing iron with fire. If metal, part seemed gold, part silver clear. If stone, carbuncle most, or chrysolite, ruby or topaz. To the 12 that shone in Aaron's breastplate, and a stone besides imagined rather oft than elsewhere seen, that stone, or like to that which here below philosophers in vain so long have sought, in vain, though by their powerful art they bind volatile Hermes, and call up unbound in various shapes old Proteus from the sea, drained through a limbeck to his native form. What wonder then if fields and regions here breathe forth elixir pure, and rivers run potable gold, when with one virtuous touch the arch-chemic sun, so far from us remote, produces with terrestrial humor mixed, here in the dark so many precious things, of color glorious, and effect so rare? Here matter new to gaze the devil met undazzled, far and wide his eye commands, for sight no obstacle found here, nor shade, but all sunshine, as when his beams at noon culminate from the equator, as they now shot upward still direct, whence no way round shadow from body opaque can fall, and the air, nowhere so clear, sharpened his visual ray to objects distant far, whereby he soon saw within ken a glorious angel stand, the same whom John saw also in the sun. His back was turned, but not his brightness hid. Of beaming sunny rays a golden tire circled his head, nor less his locks behind, illustrious on his shoulders, fledged with wings, lay waving round. On some great charge employed he seemed, or fixed in cogitation deep. Glad was the spirit impure, as now in hope, to find who might direct his wandering flight to paradise, the happy seat of man, his journey's end and our beginning woe. But first he casts to change his proper shape, which else might work him danger or delay. And now a stripling cherub he appears, not of the prime, yet such as in his face youth smiled celestial, and to every limb suitable grace diffused, so well defamed. Under a coronet his flowing hair in curls on either cheek played. Wings he wore of many a colored plume sprinkled with gold. His habit fit for speed succinct, and held before his decent steps a silver wand. He drew not nigh unheard. The angel bright, ere he drew nigh, his radiant visage turned, admonished by his ear. And straight was known the archangel Uriel, one of the seven who in God's presence, nearest to his throne, stand ready at command. And are his eyes that run through all the heavens, or down to the earth bear his swift errands over moist and dry, or sea and land. Him Satan thus accosts. Uriel, for thou of those seven spirits that stand in sight of God's high throne, gloriously bright, the first art wont his great authentic will, interpreter through highest heaven to bring, where all his sons thy embassy attend, and here art likeliest by supreme decree like honor to obtain, and as his eye to visit oft this new creation realm, unspeakable desire to see and know all these his wondrous works, but chiefly man, his chief delight and favor. Him for whom all these his works so wondrous he ordained, hath brought me from the choirs of cherubim alone thus wandering. Brightest seraph, tell in which of all these shining orbs hath man his fixed seat, or fixed seat hath none but all these shining orbs his choice to dwell, that I may find him, and with secret gaze, or open admiration, him behold on whom the great Creator hath bestowed worlds, and on whom hath all these graces poured, that both in him and all things, as is meet, the universal Maker we may praise, who justly hath driven out his rebel foes to deepest hell, and to repair that loss created this new happy race of men to serve him better. Wise are all his ways. So spake the false dissembler unperceived, for neither man nor angel can discern hypocrisy, the only evil that walks invisible, except God alone, by his permissive will through heaven and earth. And oft though wisdom wake, suspicion sleeps at wisdom's gate, and to simplicity resigns her charge, while goodness thinks no ill where no ill seems, which now for once beguiled Uriel, though regent of the sun, and held the sharpest-sighted spirit of all in heaven, who to the fraudulent impostor foul in his uprightness answer thus returned, Fair angel, thy desire which tends to know the works of God, thereby to glorify the great work-master, leads to no excess that reaches blame, but rather merits praise the more it seems excess, that led thee hither from thy empyreal mansion thus alone, to witness with thine eyes what some perhaps contented with report hear only in heaven. For wonderful indeed are all his works, pleasant to know, and worthiest to be all had in remembrance always with delight. But what created mind can comprehend their number, or the wisdom infinite that brought them forth, but hid their causes deep? I saw when at his word the formless mass, this world's material mold, came to a heap. Confusion heard his voice, and wild uproar stood vast infinitude confined, till at his second bidding darkness fled, light shone, and order from disorder sprung. Swift to their several quarters hasted then the cumbrous elements, earth, flood, air, fire, and this ethereal quintessence of heaven flew upward, spirited with various forms, that rolled orbicular, and turned to stars numberless, as thou seest, and how they moved. Each had his place appointed, each his course, the rest in circuit walls this universe. Look downward on that globe, whose hither side with light from hence, though but reflected, shines. That place is earth, the seat of man, that light his day, which else, as the other hemisphere, night would invade. But there the neighboring moon, so called that opposite fair star, her aid timely interposes, and her monthly round still ending, still renewing through mid-heaven. With borrowed light her countenance triform hence fills and empties to enlighten the earth, and in her pale dominion checks the night. That spot to which I point is paradise, Adam's abode, those lofty shades his bower. Thy way thou canst not miss, me mine requires. Thus said, he turned, and Satan, bowing low, as to superior spirits is wont in heaven, where honor due and reverence none neglects, took leave, and toward the coast of earth beneath, down from the ecliptic, sped with hoped success, throws his steep flight in many an airy wheel, nor stayed till on Niphates' talk he lights. End of Book 3, Part 2.
is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Catherine Eastman. February 2007. Paradise Lost by John Milton. Book 4, Part 1. Oh, for that warning voice, which he who saw the apocalypse heard cry in heaven aloud. Then when the dragon, put to second rout, came furious down to be revenged on men, woe to the inhabitants on earth! That now, while time was, our first parents had been warned the coming of their secret foe, and scaped happily so scaped his mortal snare. For now Satan, now first inflamed with rage, came down, the tempter ere the accuser of mankind, to wreak on innocent, frail man his loss of that first battle, and his flight to hell. Yet not rejoicing in his speed, though bold, far off and fearless, nor with cause to boast, begins his dire attempt, which nigh the birth now rolling boils in his tumultuous breast, and like a devilish engine back recoils upon himself. Horror and doubt distract his troubled thoughts, and from the bottom stir the hell within him, for within him hell he brings, and round about him, nor from hell one step no more than from himself can fly by change of place. Now conscience wakes despair that slumbered, wakes the bitter memory of what he was, what is, and what must be worse. Of worse deeds, worse sufferings must ensue. Sometimes towards Eden, which now in his view lay pleasant, his grieved look he fixes sad. Sometimes towards heaven, and the full blazing sun, which now sat high in his meridian tower. Then much revolving, thus in sighs began. O thou that with surpassing glory crowned, look'st from thy sole dominion like the god of this new world, at whose sight all the stars hide their diminished heads. To thee I call, but with no friendly voice, and add thy name, O sun, to tell thee how I hate thy beams, that bring to my remembrance from what state I fell, how glorious once above thy sphere, till pride and worse ambition threw me down, warring in heaven against heaven's matchless king. Ah, wherefore? He deserved no such return from me, whom he created what I was in that bright eminence, and with his good upbraided none. Nor was his service hard. What could be less than to afford him praise, the easiest recompense, and pay him thanks, how due? Yet all his good proved ill in me, and wrought but malice. Lifted up so high, I feigned subjection, and thought one step higher would set me highest, and in a moment quit the debt immense of endless gratitude so burdensome, still paying, still to owe, forgetful what from him I still received, and understood not that a grateful mind by owing owes not, but still pays, at once indebted and discharged. What burden then? No, had his powerful destiny ordained me some inferior angel, I had stood then happy. No unbounded hope had raised ambition. Yet, why not? Some other power as great might have aspired, and me, though mean, drawn to his part. But other powers as great fell not, but stand unshaken, from within or from without, to all temptations armed. Hadst thou the same free will and power to stand? Thou hadst. Whom hast thou then, or what to accuse, but heaven's free love, dealt equally to all. He then his love accursed, since love or hate, to me alike, it deals eternal woe. Nay, cursed be thou, since against his thy will chose freely what it now so justly rues. Me miserable, which way shall I fly infinite wrath and infinite despair? Which way I fly is hell, myself am hell, and in the lowest deep, a lower deep still threatening to devour me opens wide, to which the hell I suffer seems a heaven. Oh, then, at last relent. Is there no place left for repentance? None for pardon left? None left, but by submission, and that word disdain forbids me, and my dread of shame among the spirits beneath, whom I seduced with other promises and other bonds than to submit, boasting I could subdue the omnipotent. Ay me, they little know how dearly I abide that boast so vain, under what torments inwardly I groan, while they adore me on the throne of hell, with diadem and sceptre high advanced, the lower still I fall, only supreme in misery. Such joy ambition finds. But say I could repent, and could obtain by act of grace my former state, how soon would height recall high thoughts? How soon unsay what feigned submission swore? Ease would recant vows made in pain, as violent and void. For never can true reconcilement grow where wounds of deadly hate have pierced so deep, which would but lead me to a worse relapse and heavier fall. So should I purchase dear short intermission, bought with double smart. This knows my punisher. Therefore, as far from granting he, as I from begging peace. All hope excluded thus. Behold, instead of us outcast, exiled, his new delight, mankind created, and for him this world. So farewell, hope, and with hope farewell fear, farewell remorse. All good to me is lost. Evil, be thou my good. By thee, at least, divided empire with heaven's king I hold by thee, and more than half perhaps will reign, as man ere long, and this new world shall know. Thus while he spake, each passion dimmed his face, thrice changed with pale ire, envy, and despair, which marred his borrowed visage, and betrayed him counterfeit, if any eye beheld. For heavenly minds, from such distempers foul, are ever clear, whereof he soon aware, each perturbation smoothed with outward calm, artificer of fraud. And was the first that practised falsehood under saintly show, deep malice to conceal, couched with revenge. Yet not enough had practised to deceive Uriel once warned, whose eye pursued him down the way he went, and on the Assyrian mount saw him disfigured, more than could befall spirit of happy sort. His gestures fierce he marked, and mad demeanour, then alone, as he supposed, all observed unseen. So on he fares, and to the border comes of Eden, where delicious paradise, now nearer, crowns with her enclosure green, as with a rural mound the champaign head of a steep wilderness, whose hairy sides with thicket overgrown, grotesque and wild, access denied. And overhead upgrew insuperable height of loftiest shade, cedar, and pine, and fir, and branching palm, a sylvan scene, and as the ranks ascend, shade above shade, a woody theatre of stateliest view. Yet higher than their tops, the verdurous wall of paradise upsprung, which to our general sire gave prospect large into his nether empire neighbouring round. And higher than that wall, a circling row of goodliest trees, loaded with fairest fruit, blossoms and fruits at once of golden hue appeared, with gay enamelled colours mixed, on which the sun more glad impressed his beams than in fair evening cloud or humid bow, when God hath showered the earth. So lovely seemed that landskip, and of pure, now purer air meets his approach, and to the heart inspires vernal delight and joy, able to drive all sadness but despair. Now gentle gales, fanning their odoriferous wings, dispense native perfumes, and whisper whence they stole those balmy spoils. As when to them who sail beyond the Cape of Hope, and now are past Mozambique, off that sea northeast winds blow Sabian odours from the spicy shore of Araby the Blest. With such delay well pleased, they slack their course, and many a league cheered with the grateful smell old ocean smiles. So entertained those odorous sweets, the fiend who came their bane, though with them better pleased than Asmodeus with the fishy fume that drove him, though enamoured, from the spouse of Tobit's son, and with a vengeance sent from Media post to Egypt, there fast bound. Now to the ascent of that steep savage hill Satan had journeyed on, pensive and slow, but further way found none, so thick entwined as one continued brake, the undergrowth of shrubs and tangling bushes had perplexed all path of man or beast that passed that way. One gate there only was, and that looked east on the other side, which, when the arch-villain saw due entrance, he disdained, and in contempt, at one slight bound, high overleaped all bound of hill or highest wall, and sheer within lights on his feet, as when a prowling wolf, whom hunger drives to seek new haunt for prey, watching where shepherds pen their flocks at eve, in hurdled coats amid the field secure, leaps o'er the fence with ease into the fold, or as a thief bent to unhoard the cash of some rich burgher, whose substantial doors, cross-barred and bolted fast, fear no assault, in at the window climbs or o'er the tiles. So clomb this first grand thief into God's fold. So since into his church lewd hirelings climb, thence up he flew, and on the tree of life, the middle tree, and highest there that grew, sat like a cormorant. Yet not true life thereby regained, but sat devising death to them who lived, nor on the virtue thought of that life-giving plant, but only used for prospect, what well used had been the pledge of immortality. So little knows any but God alone to value right the good before him, but perverts best things to worst abuse, or to their meanest use. Beneath him, with new wonder, now he views to all delight of human sense exposed, in narrow room, nature's whole wealth, yea, more, a heaven on earth, for blissful paradise of God the garden was, by him in the east of Eden planted. Eden stretched her line from Oran eastward to the royal towers of great Seleucia, built by Grecian kings, or where the sons of Eden long before dwelt in Telasser. In this pleasant soil his far more pleasant garden God ordained. Out of the fertile ground he caused to grow all trees of noblest kind for sight, smell, taste, and all amid them stood the tree of life, high eminent, blooming ambrosial fruit of vegetable gold. And next to life, our death, the tree of knowledge grew fast by, knowledge of good, bought dear by knowing ill. Southward through Eden went a river large, nor changed his course, but through the shaggy hill passed underneath, engulfed. For God had thrown that mountain as his garden mold high raised upon the rapid current, which through veins of porous earth with kindly thirst updrawn rose a fresh fountain, and with many a rill watered the garden. Thence united, fell down the steep glade, and met the nether flood, which from his darksome passage now appears, and now divided into 4 main streams, runs diverse, wandering many a famous realm and country, whereof here needs no account. But rather to tell how, if art could tell, how from that sapphire fount the crisped brooks, rolling on orient pearl and sands of gold, with mazy error under pendant shades, ran nectar, visiting each plant, and fed flowers worthy of paradise, which not nice art in beds and curious knots, but nature boon powered forth profuse on hill and dale and plain, both where the morning sun first warmly smote the open field, and where the unpierced shade embrowned the noontide bowers. Thus was this place, a happy rural seat of various view, groves whose rich trees wept odorous gums and balm, others whose fruit, burnished with golden rind, hung amiable, Hesperian fables true, if true, here only, and of delicious taste. Betwixt them lawns, or level downs, and flocks, grazing the tender herb, were interposed, or palmy hillock, or the flowery lap of some irriguous valley spread her store. Flowers of all hue, and without thorn the rose. Another side, umbrageous grots and caves of cool recess, o'er which the mantling vine lays forth her purple grape, and gently creeps luxuriant. Meanwhile, murmuring waters fall down the slope hills dispersed, or in a lake that to the fringed bank with myrtle crowned her crystal mirror holds, unite their streams. The birds their choir apply, airs, vernal airs, breathing the smell of field and grove, attune their trembling leaves, while universal Pan, knit with the graces and the hours in dance, led on the eternal spring. Not that fair field of Anna, where Proserpine, gathering flowers, herself a fairer flower, by gloomy Dis was gathered, which cost Ceres all that pain to seek her through the world, nor that sweet grove of Daphne by Orontes, and the inspired Castalian spring might with this paradise of Eden strive, nor that Nicean isle, girt with the river Triton, where old Cham, whom Gentiles Ammon call, and Libyan Jove, hid Amalthea and her florid son young Bacchus from his stepdame Rhea's eye, nor where Abyssine kings their issue guard, Mount Amora, though this by some supposed true paradise under the Ethiop line by Nilus' head, enclosed with shining rock, a whole day's journey high, but wide remote from this Assyrian garden, where the fiend saw, undelighted, all delight, all kind of living creatures, new to sight and strange. Two of far nobler shape, erect and tall, godlike erect, with native honor clad in naked majesty, seemed lords of all, and worthy seemed, for in their looks divine the image of their glorious Maker shone. Truth, wisdom, sanctitude, severe and pure, severe, but in true filial freedom placed, whence true authority in men. Though both not equal, as their sex not equal seemed. For contemplation he and valour formed. For softness she, and sweet attractive grace. He for God only, she for God in him. His fair large front and eye sublime declared absolute rule, and hyacinthine locks round from his parted forelock manly hung clustering, but not beneath his shoulders broad. She as a veil down to the slender waist her unadorned golden tresses wore dishevelled, but in wanton ringlets waved as the vine curls her tendrils, which implied subjection, but required with gentle sway, and by her yielded, by him best received, yielded with coy submission, modest pride, and sweet reluctant amorous delay. Nor those mysterious parts were then concealed. Then was not guilty shame, dishonest shame of nature's works, honour dishonourable, sin-bred. How have ye troubled all mankind with shows instead, mere shows of seeming pure, and banished from man's life his happiest life, simplicity and spotless innocence? So passed they naked on, nor shunned the sight of God or angel, for they thought no ill. So hand in hand they passed, the loveliest pair that ever since in love's embraces met. Adam, the goodliest man of men since born his sons, the fairest of her daughters, Eve. Under a tuft of shade that on a green stood whispering soft, by a fresh fountain side they sat them down, and after no more toil of their sweet gardening labour than sufficed to recommend cool zephyr, and made ease more easy, wholesome thirst and appetite more grateful, to their supper fruits they fell, nectarean fruits, which the compliant boughs yielded them sidelong, as they sat recline on the soft downy bank, damasked with flowers. The savoury pulp they chew, and in the rind, still as they thirsted, scoop the brimming stream. Nor gentle purpose, nor endearing smiles wanted, nor youthful dalliance as beseems fair couple, linked in happy nuptial league alone as they. About them, frisking, played all beasts of the earth since wild, and of all chase in wood or wilderness, forest or den, sporting, the lion round, and in his paw dandled the kid. Bears, tigers, ounces, pards gambolled before them. The unwieldy elephant, to make them mirth, used all his might, and wreathed his lithe proboscis. Close, the serpent sly, insinuating, wove with Gordian twine his bearded train, and of his fatal guile gave proof unheeded. Others on the grass couched, and now filled with pasture, grazing sat, or bedward ruminating, for the sun, declined, was hasting now with prone career to the ocean isles, and in the ascending scale of heaven the stars that usher evening rose. When Satan, still in gaze as first he stood, scarce thus at length failed speech recovered, sad. O hell, what do mine eyes with grief behold? Into our room of bliss, thus high advanced, creatures of other mould, earth-born perhaps, not spirits, yet to heavenly spirits bright, little inferior, whom my thoughts pursue with wonder, with love, so lively shines in them divine resemblance, and such grace the hand that formed them on their shape hath poured. Ah, gentle pair, ye little think how nigh your change approaches, when all these delights will vanish, and deliver ye to woe. More woe, the more your taste is now of joy. Happy, but for so happy, ill secured long to continue, and this high seat your heaven ill fenced, for heaven to keep out such a foe as now is entered. Yet no purposed foe to you whom I could pity, thus forlorn, though I unpitied. League with you I seek, and mutual amity, so straight, so close that I with you must dwell, or you with me henceforth. My dwelling haply may not please like this fair paradise your sense, yet such, except your Maker's work, he gave it me, which I as freely give. Hell shall unfold to entertain you to her widest gates, and send forth all her kings. There will be room, not like these narrow limits, to receive your numerous offspring. If no better place, thank him who puts me loath to this revenge on you who wrong me not for him who wronged. And should I at your harmless innocence melt, as I do, yet public reason just, honor, and empire with revenge enlarged, by conquering this new world, compels me now to do what else, though damned, I should abhor. So spake the fiend, and with necessity, the tyrant's plea, excused his devilish deeds. Then from his lofty stand on that high tree, down he alights among the sportful herd of those four-footed kinds, himself now one, now other, as their shape served best his end, nearer to view his prey, and unespied, to mark what of their state he more might learn by word or action marked. About them round, a lion now he stalks with fiery glare. Then as a tiger, who by chance hath spied in some purlieu 2 gentle fawns at play, straight couches close, then rising changes oft his couchant watch, as one who chose his ground whence rushing he might surest seize them both, gripped in each paw. When Adam, first of men, to first of women, Eve, thus moving speech, turned him all ear to hear new utterance flow. Sole partner, and sole part of all these joys, dearer thyself than all, needs must the power that made us, and for us this ample world, be infinitely good, and of his good as liberal and free as infinite, that raised us from the dust, and placed us here in all this happiness, who at his hand have nothing merited, nor can perform aught whereof he hath need, he who requires from us no other service than to keep this one, this easy charge, of all the trees in paradise that bear delicious fruit so various, not to taste that only tree of knowledge, planted by the tree of life. So near grows death to life, whate'er death is, some dreadful thing, no doubt, for well thou know'st, God hath pronounced it death to taste that tree, the only sign of our obedience left, among so many signs of power and rule conferred upon us, and dominion given over all other creatures that possess earth, air, and sea. Then let us not think hard one easy prohibition, who enjoy free leave so large to all things else, and choice unlimited of manifold delights. But let us ever praise him, and extol his bounty, following our delightful task to prune these growing plants, and tend these flowers, which were it toilsome, yet with thee were sweet. To whom thus Eve replied, O thou, for whom and from whom I was formed, flesh of thy flesh, and without whom am to no end my guide and head, what thou hast said is just and right. For we to him indeed all praises owe, and daily thanks, I chiefly, who enjoy so far the happier lot, enjoying thee preeminent by so much odds, while thou, like consort to thyself, canst nowhere find. That day I oft remember, when from sleep I first awaked, and found myself reposed under a shade on flowers, much wondering where and what I was, whence thither brought, and how? Not distant, far from thence, a murmuring sound of waters issued from a cave, and spread into a liquid flame, then stood unmoved, pure as the expanse of heaven. I thither went, with unexperienced thought, and laid me down on the green bank, to look into the clear, smooth lake, that to me seemed another sky. As I bent down to look, just opposite, a shape within the watery gleam appeared bending to look on me. I started back, it started back, but pleased, I soon returned. Pleased it returned as soon, with answering looks of sympathy and love. There I had fixed mine eyes till now, and pined with vain desire, had not a voice thus warned me. What thou seest, what there thou seest, fair creature, is thyself. With thee it came and goes, but follow me, and I will bring thee where no shadow stays thy coming and thy soft embraces. He whose image thou art, him thou shalt enjoy inseparably thine. To him shalt bear multitudes like thyself, and thence be called mother of human race. What could I do but follow straight, invisibly thus led, till I espied thee, fair indeed, and tall under a plated, yet methought less fair, less winning soft, less amiably mild than that smooth watery image. Back I turned, thou following, criedst aloud, Return, fair Eve, whom fliest thou? Whom thou fliest, of him thou art, his flesh, his bone. To give thee being, I lent out of my side to thee, nearest my heart, substantial life, to have thee by my side, henceforth an individual solace dear. Part of my soul I seek thee, and thee claim my other half. With that thy gentle hand seized mine, I yielded, and from that time see how beauty is excelled by manly grace and wisdom, which alone is truly fair. End of Book 4, Part 1.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Corey Samuel. Paradise Lost by John Milton. Book 4, Part 2. So spake our General Mother, and with eyes of conjugal attraction unreproved, and meek surrender, half embracing leaned on our first father. Half her swelling breast, naked, met his, under the flowing gold of her loose tresses hid. He, in delight both of her beauty and submissive charms, smiled with superior love, as Jupiter on Juno smiles, when he imprains the clouds that shed May flowers, and pressed her matron lip with kisses pure. Aside the devil turned for envy, yet with jealous leer malign eyed them askance, and to himself thus plained. Sight hateful, sight tormenting, thus these two imparadised in one another's arms, the happier Eden shall enjoy their fill of bliss on bliss, while I to hell am thrust, where neither joy nor love, but fierce desire, among our other torments not the least, still unfulfilled with pain of longing pines. Yet let me not forget what I have gained from their own mouths. All is not theirs, it seems. One fatal tree there stands of knowledge called, forbidden them to taste. Knowledge forbidden, suspicious, reasonless. Why should their Lord envy them that? Can it be sin to know? Can it be death? And do they only stand by ignorance? Is that their happy state, the proof of their obedience and their faith? O fair foundation laid whereon to build their ruin! Hence I will excite their minds with more desire to know, and to reject envious commands, invented with design to keep them low, whom knowledge might exalt equal with gods. Aspiring to be such, they taste and die. What likelier can ensue? But first, with narrow search, I must walk round this garden, and no corner leave unspied. A chance, but chance may lead where I may meet some wandering spirit of heaven by fountain side, or in thick shade retired, from him to draw what further would be learnt. Live while you may, yet happy pair, enjoy till I return short pleasures, for long woes are to succeed. So saying, his proud step he scornful turned, but with sly circumspection, and began through wood, through waste, o'er hill, o'er dale, his roam. Meanwhile, in utmost longitude, where heaven with earth and ocean meets, the setting sun slowly descended, and with right aspect against the eastern gate of paradise levelled his evening rays. It was a rock of alabaster, piled up to the clouds, conspicuous far, winding with one ascent accessible from earth, one entrance high. The rest was craggy cliff that overhung still as it rose, impossible to climb. Betwixt these rocky pillars Gabriel sat, chief of th' angelic guards, awaiting night. About him exercised heroic games th' unarmed youth of heaven, but nigh at hand celestial armoury, shields, helms, and spears hung high with diamond flaming and with gold. Thither came Uriel, gliding through the even on a sunbeam, swift as a shooting star in autumn thwarts the night. When vapours fired impress the air, and shows the mariner from what point of his compass to beware impetuous winds, he thus began in haste. Gabriel, to thee thy course by lot hath given charge and strict watch, that to this happy place no evil thing approach or enter in. This day, at height of noon, came to my sphere a spirit, zealous as he seemed to know more of th' Almighty's works, and chiefly man, God's latest image. I described his way, bent on all speed, and marked his airy gait. But in the mount that lies from Eden north, where first he lighted, soon discerned his looks alien from heaven, with passions foul obscured. Mine eye pursued him still, but under shade lost sight of him. One of the banished crew, I fear, hath ventured from the deep to raise new troubles. Him thy care must be to find. To whom the winged warrior thus returned. Uriel, no wonder of thy perfect sight, amid the sun's bright circle where thou sit'st, see far and wide. In at this gate none pass, the vigilance here placed, but such as come well known from heaven, and since meridian hour no creature thence, if spirit of other sort, so minded, have o'erleapt these earthly bounds on purpose. Hard thou know'st it to exclude a spiritual substance with corporeal bar. But if within the circuit of these walls, in whatsoever shape he lurk, of whom thou tell'st, by morrow dawning I shall know. So promised he, and Uriel to his charge returned on that bright beam, whose point now raised bore him slope downward to the sun now fallen beneath the Azores. Whither the prime orb, incredible how swift, had thither rolled diurnal, or this less voluble earth, by shorter flight to these, had left him there, arraying with reflected purple and gold the clouds that on his western throne attend. Now came still evening on, and twilight grey had in her sober livery all things clad. Silence accompanied, for beast and bird, they to their grassy couch, these to their nests, were slunk, all but the wakeful nightingale. She all night long her amorous descant sung. Silence was pleased. Now glowed the firmament with living sapphires. Hesperus, that led the starry host, rode brightest, till the moon, rising in clouded majesty, at length, apparent queen, unveiled her peerless light, and o'er the dark her silver mantle threw. When Adam thus to Eve, fair consort, thou art of night, and all things now retired to rest, mind us of like repose, since God hath set labour and rest as day and night to men successive, and the timely dew of sleep, now falling with soft slumberous weight, inclines our eyelids. Other creatures all day long rove idle, unemployed, and less need rest. Man hath his daily work of body or mind appointed, which declares his dignity, and the regard of heaven on all his ways. While other animals unactive range, and of their doings God takes no account. Tomorrow, ere fresh mornings streak the east with first approach of light, we must be risen, and at our pleasant labour, to reform yon flowery arbours, yonder alleys green, our walks at noon with branches overgrown, that mock our scant manuring, and require more hands than ours to lop their wanton growth. Those blossoms also, and those dropping gums, that lie bestrewn unsightly and unsmooth, ask riddance if we mean to tread with ease. Meanwhile, as nature wills, night bids us rest. To whom thus, Eve, with perfect beauty adorned: My author and disposer, what thou bidst unargued I obey, so God ordains, God is thy law, thou mine. To know no more is woman's happiest knowledge, and her praise. With thee conversing I forget all time, all seasons and their change, all please alike. Sweet is the breath of morn, her rising sweet, with charm of earliest birds. Pleasant the sun, when first on this delightful land he spreads his orient beams, on herb, tree, fruit, and flower, glistering with dew. Fragrant the fertile earth after soft showers, and sweet the coming on of grateful evening mild, then silent night, with this her solemn bird and this fair moon, and these the gems of heaven, her starry train. But neither breath of morn when she ascends with charm of earliest birds, nor rising sun on this delightful land, nor herb, fruit, flower, glistering with dew, nor fragrance after showers, nor grateful evening mild, nor silent night with this her solemn bird, nor walk by moon, or glittering starlight, without thee is sweet. But wherefore all night long shine these? For whom this glorious sight, when sleep hath shut all eyes? To whom our general ancestor replied: Daughter of God and man, accomplished Eve, those have their course to finish round the earth, by tomorrow evening, and from land to land in order, though to nations yet unborn, ministering light prepared they set and rise, lest total darkness should by night regain her old possession, and extinguish life in nature and all things, which these soft fires not only enlighten, but with kindly heat of various influence ferment and warm, temper or nourish, or in part shed down their stellar virtue on all kinds that grow on earth, made hereby apter to receive perfection from the sun's more potent ray. These then, though unbeheld in deep of night, shine not in vain, nor think, though men were none, that heaven would want spectators, God want praise. Millions of spiritual creatures walk the earth unseen, both when we wake and when we sleep. All these with ceaseless praise his works behold, both day and night. How often from the steep of echoing hill or thicket have we heard celestial voices to the midnight air, soul or responsive each to other's note, singing their great Creator, oft in bands while they keep watch, or nightly rounding walk with heavenly touch of instrumental sounds, in full harmonic number joined, their songs divide the night, and lift our thoughts to heaven. Thus talking, hand in hand alone, they passed on to their blissful bower. It was a place chosen by the sovereign planter, when he framed all things to man's delightful use. The roof of thickest covert was inwoven shade laurel and myrtle, and what higher grew of firm and fragrant leaf, on either side acanthus, and each odorous bushy shrub fenced up the verdant wall, each beauteous flower, iris all hues, roses and jasmine, reared high their flourished heads between, and wrought mosaic. Underfoot the violet, crocus, and hyacinth, with a rich inlay broidered the ground, more coloured than with stone of costliest emblem. Other creature here, beast, bird, insect, or worm, durst enter none, such was their awe of man. In shadier bower, more sacred and sequestered, though but feigned, Pan or Sylvanus never slept, nor nymph nor faunus haunted. Here in close recess, with flowers, garlands, and sweet-smelling herbs, espoused Eve decked first her nuptial bed, and heavenly choirs the Hymenaean sung. What day the genial angel to our sire brought her in naked beauty more adorned, more lovely than Pandora, whom the gods endowed with all their gifts. And oh too like in sad event, when to the unwiser son of Japhet, bought by Hermes, she ensnared mankind with her fair looks, to be avenged on him who had stole Jove's authentic fire. Thus at their shady lodge arrived, both stood, both turned, and under open sky adored the God that made both sky, air, earth, and heaven, which they beheld, the moon's resplendent globe and starry pole. Thou also madest the night, Maker omnipotent, and thou the day, which we in our appointed work employed, have finished happy in our mutual help and mutual love, the crown of all our bliss ordained by thee. And this delicious place for us too large, where thy abundance wants partakers, and uncropped falls to the ground. But thou hast promised from us two a race to fill the earth, who shall with us extol thy goodness infinite, both when we wake and when we seek, as now, thy gift of sleep. This said unanimous, and other rites observing none, but adoration pure, which God likes best, into their inmost bower handed they went, and eased the putting off these troublesome disguises which we wear. Straight side by side were laid, nor turned I ween Adam from his fair spouse, nor Eve the rites mysterious of connubial love refused. Whatever hypocrites austerely talk of purity and place and innocence, defaming as impure what God declares pure, and commands to some, leaves free to all. Our Maker bids increase, who bids abstain but our destroyer, foe to God and man. Hail wedded love, mysterious law, true source of human offspring, sole propriety, in paradise of all things common else. By thee adulterous lust was driven from them, among the bestial herds to range. By thee, founded in reason, loyal, just, and pure, relations dear, and all the charities of father, son, and brother first were known. Far be it that I should write thee sin or blame, or think thee unbefitting holiest place, perpetual fountain of domestic sweets, whose bed is undefiled and chaste pronounced, present or past, as saints and patriarchs used. Here love his golden shafts employs, here lights his constant lamp, and waves his purple wings, reigns here and revels, not in the bought smile of harlots, loveless, joyless, unendeared, casual fruition, nor in court amours, mixed dance, or wanton mask, or midnight ball, or serenade, which the starved lover sings to his proud fair, best quitted with disdain. These, lulled by nightingales embracing slept, and on their naked limbs the flowery roof showered roses, which the morn repaired. Sleep on, blessed pair, and oh yet happiest if ye seek no happier state, and know to know no more. Now had night measured with her shadowy cone half-way uphill this vast sublunar vault, and from their ivory port the cherubim, forth issuing at the accustomed hour, stood armed to their night watches in warlike parade, when Gabriel to his next in power thus spake: Uziel, half these draw off and coast the south with strictest watch, these other wheel the north, our circuit meets full west. As flame they part half-wheeling to the shield, half to the spear. From these, two strong and subtle spirits, he called that near him stood, and gave them thus in charge. Ithuriel and Zephon, with winged speed, search through this garden, leave unsearched no nook, but chiefly where those two fair creatures lodge, now laid perhaps asleep, securer of harm. This evening, from the sun's decline arrived who tells of some infernal spirit seen hitherward bent, who could have thought? escaped the bars of hell, on errand bad, no doubt. Such where ye find, seize fast and hither bring. So saying, on he led his radiant fires, dazzling the moon. These to the bower direct, in search of whom they sought. Him there they found, squat like a toad, close at the ear of Eve, essaying by his devilish art to reach the organs of her fancy, and with them forge illusions as he list, phantasms and dreams. Or if, inspiring venom, he might taint with animal spirits that from pure blood arise, like gentle breaths from rivers pure. Thence raise at least distempered, discontented thoughts, vain hopes, vain aims, inordinate desires, blown up with high conceits engendering pride. Him thus intent, ethereal, with his spear touched lightly, for no falsehood can endure touch of celestial temper, but returns of force to its own likeness. Up he starts, discovered and surprised, as when a spark lights on a heap of nitrous powder, laid fit for the tons some magazine to store against a rumoured war. The smutty grain with sudden blaze diffused inflamed the air. So started up in his own shape the fiend. Back stepped those two fair angels, half amazed so sudden to behold the grisly king. Yet thus, unmoved with fear, accost him soon. Which of those rebel spirits adjudged to hell comest thou, escaped thy prison, and transformed? Why satst thou like an enemy in wait, here watching at the head of these that sleep? Know ye not, then said Satan, filled with scorn, know ye not me? Ye knew me once no mate for you, there sitting where ye durst not soar. Not to know me argues yourselves unknown, the lowest of your throng. Or if ye know, why ask ye, and superfluous begin your message, like to end as much in vain? To whom thus Zephon, answering scorn with scorn: Think not, revolted spirit, thy shape the same, or undiminished brightness, to be known as when thou stoodst in heaven upright and pure. That glory then, when thou no more wast good, departed from thee, and thou resemblest now thy sin and place of doom obscure and foul. But come, for thou, be sure, shalt give account to him who sent us, whose charge is to keep this place inviolable, and these from harm. So spake the cherub, and his grave rebuke, severe in youthful beauty, added grace invincible. Abashed the devil stood, and felt how awful goodness is, and saw virtue in her shape how lovely, saw and pined his loss, but chiefly to find here observed his lustre visibly impaired, yet seemed undaunted. If I must contend, said he, best with the best, the sender not the sent, or all at once, more glory will be won, or less be lost. Thy fear, said Zephon bold, will save us trial what the least can do, single against thee wicked, and thence weak. The fiend replied not, overcome with rage, but like a proud steed reined, went haughty on, chomping his iron curb. To strive or fly he held it vain, or from above had quelled his heart, not else dismayed. Now drew they nigh the western point, where those half-rounding guards just met, and closing stood in squadron joined, awaiting next command. To whom their chief Gabriel from the front thus called aloud: O friends, I hear the tread of nimble feet hasting this way, and now by glimpse discern Ithuriel and Zephon through the shade, and with them comes a third of regal port, but faded splendour wan, who by his gait and fierce demeanour seems the prince of hell, not likely to part hence without contest. Stand firm, for in his look defiance lowers. He scarce had ended, when those two approached, and brief related whom they brought, where found, how busied, in what form and posture couched. To whom, with stern regard, thus Gabriel spake: Why hast thou, Satan, broke the bounds prescribed to thy transgressions, and disturbed the charge of others, who approve not to transgress by thy example, but have power and right to question thy bold entrance on this place, employed it seems to violate sleep, and those whose dwelling God hath planted here in bliss. To whom thus Satan, with contemptuous brow: Gabriel, thou hadst in heaven the steam of wise, and such I held thee, but this question asked puts me in doubt. Lives there who loves his pain, who would not, finding way, break loose from hell, though thither doomed? Thou wouldst thyself, no doubt, and boldly venture to whatever place farthest from pain, where thou mightst hope to change torment with ease, and soonest recompense dole with delight, which in this place I sought. To thee no reason, who know'st only good, but evil has not tried. And wilt object his will who bound us? Let him surer bar his iron gates, if he intends our stay in that black durance. Thus much what was asked. The rest is true, they found me where they say, but that implies not violence nor harm. Thus he in scorn. The warlike angel moved, disdainfully half smiling, thus replied: O loss of one in heaven to judge of wise, since Satan fell, whom folly overthrew, and now returns him from his prison scape, gravely in doubt whether to hold them wise or not, who ask what boldness brought him hither, unlicensed from his bounds in hell prescribed. So wise he judges it to fly from pain, however, and escape this punishment. So judge thou still, presumptuous, till the wrath, which thou incurrest by flying, meets thy flight sevenfold, and scourge that wisdom back to hell, which taught thee yet no better, that no pain can equal anger infinite provoked. But wherefore thou alone? Wherefore with thee came not all hell broke loose? Is pain to them less pain, less to be fled, or thou then they less hardy to endure? Courageous chief, the first in flight from pain, hadst thou alleged to thy deserted host this cause of flight, thou surely hadst not come sole fugitive. To which the fiend thus answered, frowning stern: Not that I less endure, or shrink from pain, insulting angel. Well thou knowest I stand by fiercest, when in battle to thy aid the blasting volleyed thunder made all speed, and seconded thy else not dreaded spear. But still thy words at random, as before, argue thy inexperience what behooves from hard assays and ill successes past, a faithful leader, not to hazard all through ways of danger by himself untried. I therefore, I alone first undertook to wing the desolate abyss, and spy this new created world, whereof in hell fame is not silent, here in hope to find better abode, and my afflicted powers to settle here on earth, or in mid-air, though for possession put to try once more what thou and thy gay legions dare against, whose easier business were to serve their Lord high up in heaven, with songs to hymn his throne, and practise distances to cringe, not fight. To whom the warrior angel soon replied: To say, and straight unsay, pretending first wise to fly pain, professing next to spy, argues no leader, but a liar fact. Satan, and couldst thou faithful add? O name, O sacred name of faithfulness profaned, faithful to whom? To thy rebellious crew? Army of fiends, fit body to fit head. Was this your discipline and faith engaged, your military obedience, to dissolve allegiance to that acknowledged power supreme? And thou, sly hypocrite, who now wouldst seem patron of liberty, who more than thou once fawned and cringed, and servilely adored heaven's awful monarch? Wherefore but in hope to dispossess him, and thyself to reign? But mark what I rede thee now, Avant, fly thither whence thou fledst. If from this hour within these hallowed limits thou appear, back to the infernal pit I'll drag thee chained, and seal thee so, as henceforth not to scorn the facile gates of hell too slightly barred. So threatened he, but Satan to no threats gave heed, but waxing more enraged replied: Then when I am thy captive, talk of chains, proud limitary cherub, but ere then far heavier load thyself expect to feel from my prevailing arm. Though heaven's king ride on thy wings, and thou with thy compeers used to the yoke, drawest his triumphant wheels in progress through the road of heaven's star-pave. While thus he spake, th' angelic squadron bright turned fiery red, sharpening the mooned horns their flanks, and began to hem him round with ported spears, as thick as when a field of Ceres ripe for harvest, waving bends her bearded grove of ears, which way the wind sways them. The careful ploughman doubting stands, lest on the threshing floor his hopeful sheaves prove chaff. On the other side, Satan, alarmed, collecting all his might, dilated stood, like Tenerife or Atlas unremoved. His stature reached the sky, and on his crest sat horror plumed, nor wanted in his grasp what seemed both spear and shield. Now dreadful deeds might have ensued, nor only paradise in this commotion, but the starry cope of heaven perhaps, or all the elements, had at least gone to wrack, disturbed and torn with the violence of this conflict. Had not soon the Eternal, to prevent such horrid fray, hung forth in heaven his golden scales, yet seen betwixt Astrea and the Scorpion sign, wherein all things created first he weighed, the pendulous round earth with balanced air in counterpoise, now ponders all events, battles and realms. In these he put two weights, the sequel each of parting and of fight. The latter quick up flew, and kicked the beam, which Gabriel spying, thus bespake the fiend. Satan, I know thy strength, and thou knowest mine, neither our own but given. What folly then to boast what arms can do, since thine no more than heaven permits, nor mine, though doubled now, to trample thee as mire. For proof look up, and read thy lot in yon celestial sign, where thou art weighed, and shown how light, how weak, if thou resist. The fiend looked up, and knew his mounted scale aloft, nor more, but fled murmuring, and with him fled the shades of night. The end of the second part of the fourth book.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clayton Smith. Paradise Lost by John Milton. Book 5, Part 1. Now morn her rosy steps the eastern clime advancing, sowed the earth with orient pearl, when Adam waked, so customed, for his sleep was airy light, from pure digestion bred and temperate vapors bland, which the only sound of leaves and fuming rills, Aurora's fan lightly dispersed, and the shrill matin song of birds on every bough. So much the more his wonder was to find unwakened Eve with tresses discomposed and glowing cheek, as through unquiet rest. He on his side leaning half raised, with looks of cordial love hung over her enamored, and beheld beauty, which whether waking or asleep shot forth peculiar graces. Then with voice mild as when Zephyrus on Flora breathes, her hand soft touching, whispered thus: Awake, my fairest, my espoused, my latest found, heaven's last best gift, my ever new delight. Awake, the morning shines, and the fresh field calls us. We lose the prime to mark how spring our tinted plants, how blows the citron grove, what drops the myrrh and what the balmy reed, how nature paints her colors, how the bee sits on the bloom extracting liquid sweet. Such whispering waked her, but with startled eye on Adam, whom embracing, thus she spake: Soul in whom my thoughts find all repose, my glory, my perfection, glad I see thy face and morn return, for I this night, such night till this I never passed, have dreamed if dreamed, not as I oft am wont of thee, works of day past, or morrow's next design, but of offence and trouble, which my mind knew never till this irksome night. Methought close at mine ear one called me forth to walk with gentle voice. I thought it thine. It said, Why sleep'st thou, Eve? Now is the pleasant time. the cool, the silent, save where silence yields to the night-warbling bird that now awake tunes sweetest his love-labored song. Now reigns full-orbed the moon, and with more pleasing light shadowy sets off the face of things, in vain if none regard. Heaven wakes with all his eyes, whom to behold but thee, nature's desire, in whose sight all things joy, with ravishment attracted by thy beauty still to gaze. I rose as at thy call, but found thee not. To find thee I directed then my walk, and on me thought alone I passed through ways that brought me on a sudden to the tree of interdicted knowledge. Fair it seemed, much fairer to my fancy than by day, and as I wondering looked, beside it stood one shaped and winged like one of those from heaven by us oft seen. His dewy locks distilled ambrosia. On that tree he also gazed, and "O fair plant," said he, "with fruits surcharged, deigns none to ease thy load and taste thy sweet, nor god nor man? Is knowledge so despised? Or envy, or what reserve forbids to taste, forbid who will, none shall from me withhold longer thy offered good. Why else set here?" Thus said he paused not, but with venturous arm he plucked, he tasted. Me damp horror chilled at such bold words, vouched with a deed so bold, but he thus overjoyed. "O fruit divine, sweet of thyself, but much more sweet, thus cropped, forbidden here, it seems as only fit for gods, yet able to make gods of men. And why not gods of men, since good, the more communicated, more abundant grows, the author not impaired, but honored more? Here, happy creature, fair angelic Eve, partake thou also. Happy though thou art, happier thou mayst be. Worthier canst not be. Taste this, and be henceforth among the gods, thyself a goddess, not to earth confined, but sometimes in the air, as we sometimes ascend to heaven by merit thine, and see what life the gods live there, and such live thou." So saying, he drew nigh, and to me held, even to my mouth, of that same fruit held part which he had plucked. The pleasant savoury smell so quickened appetite, that I methought could not but taste. Forthwith up to the clouds with him I flew, and underneath beheld the earth outstretched immense, a prospect wide and various, wondering at my flight, and changed to this high exaltation. Suddenly my guide was gone, and I, methought, sunk down and fell asleep. Oh, how glad I waked to find this but a dream. Thus Eve her night related, and thus Adam answered sad. Best image of myself, and dearer half, the trouble of thy thoughts this night in sleep affects me equally. Nor can I like this uncouth dream of evil sprung, I fear. Yet evil went. In thee can harbour none created pure, but know that in the soul are many lesser faculties that serve reason as chief. Among these, fancy next her office holds, of all external things, which the 5 watchful senses represent. She forms imaginations, airy shapes, which reason, joining or disjoining, frames all what we affirm or what deny, and calls our knowledge or opinion, and retires into her private cell when nature rests. Oft in her absence mimic fancy wakes to imitate her, but in this joining shapes wild work produces oft, and most in dreams, ill-matching words and deeds long past or late. Some such resemblances methinks I find of our last evening's talk, in this thy dream, but with addition strange. Yet be not sad. Evil into the mind of God or man may come and go, so unapproved, and leave no spot or blame behind, which gives me hope that what in sleep thou didst abhor to dream, waking thou never wilt consent to do. Be not disheartened, then, nor cloud those looks that want to be more cheerful and serene than when fair morning first smiles on the world, and let us to our fresh employments rise among the groves, the fountains, and the flowers, that open now their choicest bosomed smells reserved from night. and kept for thee in store. So cheered he his fair spouse, and she was cheered, but silently a gentle tear let fall from either eye, and wiped them with her hair. 2 other precious drops that ready stood, each in their crystal sluice, he, ere they fell, kissed, as the gracious signs of sweet remorse and pious awe, that feared to have offended. So all was cleared, and to the field they haste, but first from under shady arbor's roof, soon as they forth were come to open sight of dayspring, and the sun, who scarce uprisen, with wheels yet hovering o'er the ocean brim, shot parallel to the earth his dewy ray, discovering in wide landscape all the east of paradise and Eden's happy plains. Lowly they bowed adoring, and began their orisons, each morning duly paid in various style, for neither various style nor holy rapture wanted they to praise their Maker, in fit strains pronounced, or sung unmeditated. Such prompt eloquence flowed from their lips, in prose or numerous verse, more tunable than needed lute or harp to add more sweetness. And they thus began. These are thy glorious works, Parent of good, Almighty. Thine this universal frame, thus wondrous fair. Thyself, how wondrous then, unspeakable, who sitt'st above these heavens, to us invisible or dimly seen in these thy lowest works. Yet these declare thy goodness beyond thought and power divine. Speak ye who best can tell, ye sons of light, angels, for ye behold him, and with songs and choral symphonies, day without night, circle his throne rejoicing. Ye in heaven, on earth join all ye creatures to extol him first, him last, him midst and without end, fairest of stars, last in the train of night, if better thou belong not to the dawn, sure pledge of day that crown'st the smiling morn with thy bright circlet. Praise him in thy sphere while day arises, that sweet hour of prime. Thou Son of this great world, both eye and soul acknowledge him thy greater, sound his praise in thy eternal course, both when thou climbst, and when high noon hast gained, and when thou fallst. Moon that now meets the orient sun, now fliest with the fixed stars, fixed in their orb that flies, and ye 5 other wandering fires, that move in mystic dance, not without song, resound his praise, who out of darkness called up light. Air, and ye elements, the eldest birth of nature's womb, that in quaternion run perpetual circle, multiform, and mix and nourish all things. Let your ceaseless change vary to our great Maker's still new praise. Ye mists and exhalations that now rise from hill or streaming lake, dusky or grey, till the sun paints your fleecy skirts with gold in honor to the world's great author. Rise, whether to deck with clouds the uncolored sky, or wet the thirsty earth with falling showers, rising or falling, still advance his praise ye winds, that from 4 quarters blow, breathe soft or loud, and wave your tops, ye pines with every plant and sign of worship. Wave, fountains, and ye that warble as ye flow, melodious murmurs, warbling tune his praise. Join voices, all ye living souls, ye birds that sing up to heaven gate ascend, bear on your wings and in your notes his praise. Ye that in waters glide, and ye that walk the earth in stately tread, or lowly creep, witness if I be silent, morn or even, to hill or valley, fountain or fresh shade, made vocal by my song, and taught his praise. Hail, universal Lord, be bounteous still to give us only good, and if the night have gathered aught of evil or concealed, disperse it, as now light dispels the dark. So prayed they innocent, and to their thoughts firm peace recovered soon and wonted calm. On to their morning's rural work they haste, among sweet dews and flowers, where any row of fruit trees over woody reached too far their pampered boughs, and needed hands to check fruitless embraces. Or they led the vine to wed her elm, she spoused about him twines her marriageable arms, and with her brings her dower, the adopted clusters, to adorn his barren leaves. Them thus employed, beheld with pity heaven's high king, and to him called Raphael, the sociable spirit, that deigned to travel with Tobias and secured his marriage with the 7 times wedded maid. Raphael, said he, thou hearest what stir on earth Satan from hell escaped through the darksome gulf hath raised in paradise, and how disturbed this night the human pair, how he designs in them at once to ruin all mankind. Go, therefore, half this day as friend with friend converse with Adam, in what bower or shade thou find'st him from the heat of noon retired, to respite his day labour with repast or with repose. And such discourse bring on as may advise him of his happy state. Happiness in his power left free to will, left to his own free will, his will, though free yet mutable. Whence warn him to beware he swerve not too secure. Tell him withal his danger, and from whom, what enemy late fallen himself from heaven is plotting now the fall of others from like state of bliss. By violence, no, for that shall be withstood, but by deceit and lies. This let him know, least wilfully transgressing, he pretends surprisal, unadmonished, unforewarned. So spake the Eternal Father, and fulfilled all justice, nor delayed the winged saint after his charge received, but from among 1,000 celestial ardors where he stood, veiled with his gorgeous wings, upspringing light flew through the midst of heaven. Angelic choirs on each hand parting, to his speed gave way through all the imperial road, till at the gate of heaven arrived, the gate self-opened wide on golden hinges turning, as by work divine the sovereign architect had framed. From hence, no cloud or to obstruct his sight star interposed, however small he sees, not unconformed to other shining globes, earth and the garden of God, with cedars crowned above all hills, as when by night the glass of Galileo, less assured, observes imagined lands and relics in the moon, or Pilate from amidst the Cyclades, Delos or Samos, first appearing, kens a cloudy spot. Down thither prone in flight he speeds, and through the vast ethereal sky sails between worlds and worlds, with steady wing now on the polar winds, then with quick fan winnows the buxom air, till within soar of towering eagles, to all the fowls he seems a phoenix, gazed by all as that sole bird when to enshrine his relics in the sun's bright temple, to Egyptian Thebes he flies. At once on the eastern cliff of paradise he lights, and to his proper shape returns, a seraph winged. 6 wings he wore, to shade his lineaments divine. The pair that clad each shoulder broad came mantling o'er his breast with regal ornament. The middle pair girt like a starry zone his waist, and round skirted his loins and thighs with downy gold and colors dipped in heaven. The third his feet shadowed from either heel with feathered mail, sky tinctured grain. Like Maya's son he stood and shook his plumes, that heavenly fragrance filled the circuit wide. Straight knew him all the bands of angels under watch, and to his state and to his message high in honor rise, for on some message high they guessed him bound. Their glittering tents he passed, and now is come into the blissful field, through groves of myrrh and flowering odors, cassia, nard, and balm, a wilderness of sweets, for nature here wantoned as in her prime, and played at will her virgin fancies, pouring forth more sweet, wild above rule or art, enormous bliss. Him through the spicy forest onward come, Adam discerned, as in the door he sat of his cool bower, while now the mounted sun shot down direct his fervid rays to warm earth's inmost womb, more warmth than Adam need, and Eve within, due at her hour, prepared for dinner savory fruits, of taste to please true appetite, and not disrelish thirst, of nectarous draughts between, from milky stream, berry, or grape, to whom thus Adam called, Haste hither, Eve, and worth thy sight, behold eastward among those trees, what glorious shape comes this way moving? It seems another morn risen on mid-noon. Some great behest from heaven to us perhaps he brings, and will vouchsafe this day to be our guest. But go with speed, and what thy stores contain bring forth and pour abundance, fit to honor and receive our heavenly stranger. Well we may afford our givers their own gifts, and large bestow from large bestowed, where nature multiplies her fertile growth, and by disburdening grows more fruitful, which instructs us not to spare. To whom thus Eve, Adam, earth's hallowed mold, of God inspired, small store will serve, where store all seasons, ripe for use hangs on the stalk, save what by frugal storing firmness gains to nourish, and superfluous moist consumes. But I will haste, and from each bough and brake, each plant and juiciest gourd, will pluck such choice to entertain our angel guest, as he beholding shall confess that here on earth God hath dispensed his bounties as in heaven. So saying, with dispatchful looks in haste she turns, on hospitable thoughts intent. What choice to choose for delicacy best? What order so contrived as not to mix tastes not well joined, inelegant, but bring taste after taste, upheld with kindliest change, bestirs her then, and from each tender stalk, whatever earth all-bearing mother yields, in India, east or west, or middle shore, in Pontus, or the Punic coast, or where Alcinous reigned, fruit of all kinds, in coat rough or smooth rind, or bearded husk, or shell she gathers, tribute large, and on the board heaps with unsparing hand. For drink the grape she crushes, inoffensive most, and meaths from many a berry, and from sweet kernels pressed she tempers dulcet creams, nor these to hold wants her fit vessels pure, then strews the ground with rose and odors from the shrub unfumed. Meanwhile our primitive great-sire, to meet his godlike guest, walks forth, without more train accompanied than with his own complete perfections. In himself was all his state, more solemn than the tedious pomp that waits on princes, when their rich retinue long of horses led, and grooms, besmeared with gold, dazzles the crowd and sets them all agape. Nearer his presence Adam, though not awed, yet with submiss approach, and reverence meek, as to a superior nature, bowing low, thus said, Native of heaven, for other place none can than heaven such glorious shape contain, since by descending from the thrones above those happy places thou hast deigned a while to want, and honor these, vouchsafe with us two only, who yet by sovereign gift possess this spacious ground, in yonder shady bower to rest, and what the garden choicest bears to sit and taste, till this meridian heat be over, and the sun more cool decline. Whom thus the angelic virtue answered mild, Adam, I therefore came, nor art thou such created or such place hast here to dwell as may not oft invite the spirits of heaven to visit thee. Lead on then where thy bower o'ershades, for these mid-hours till evening rise I have at will. So to the sylvan lodge they came, that like Pomona's arbor smiled with florets decked and fragrant smells. But Eve, undecked, save with herself more lovely fair than wood nymph, were the fairest goddess feigned of three, that in Mount Ida naked strove, stood to entertain her guest from heaven. No veil she needed, virtue proof, no thought infirm altered her cheek, on whom the angel hail bestowed, the holy salutation used long after to blessed Mary, second Eve. Hail, mother of mankind, whose fruitful womb shall fill the world more numerous with thy sons, than with these various fruits the trees of God have heaped this table. Raised of grassy turf their table was, and mossy seats had round, and on her ample square from side to side, all autumn piled, though spring and autumn here danced hand in hand. A wild discourse they hold, no fear lest dinner cool, when thus began our author. Heavenly stranger, pleased to taste these bounties which our nourisher, from whom all perfect good unmeasured out descends to us for food and for delight, hath caused the earth to yield. Unsavory food perhaps to spiritual natures, only this I know, that one celestial Father gives to all. End of Book 5, Part 1.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by J.A. Carter. Paradise Lost by John Milton. Book 5, Part 2. To whom the angel. Therefore what he gives, whose praise be ever sung, to man in part spiritual, may of purest spirits be found no ingrateful food, and food alike those pure intelligential substances require, as doth your rational, and both contain within them every lower faculty of sense, whereby they hear, see, smell, touch, taste, tasting, concoct, digest, assimilate, and corporeal to incorporeal turn. For know, whatever was created needs to be sustained and fed. Of elements the grosser feeds the purer, earth the sea, earth and the sea feed air, the air those fires ethereal, and as lowest first the moon, whence in her visage round those spots unpurged vapours not yet into her substance turned. Nor doth the moon no nourishment exhale from her moist continent to higher orbs. The sun that light imparts to all receives from all his elemental recompense in humid exhalations, and at even sups with the ocean. Though in heaven the trees of life ambrosial fruitage bear, and vines yielded nectar, though from off the boughs each morn we brush mellifluous dews, and find the ground covered with pearly grain. Yet God hath here varied his bounty so with new delights, as may compare with heaven, and to taste think not I shall be nice. So down they sat, and to their viands fell, nor seemingly the angel, nor in mist the common gloss of theologians, but with keen dispatch of real hunger, and concoctive heat to transubstantiate. What redounds transpires through spirits with ease, nor wonder, if by fire of sooty coal the empiric alchemist can turn, or holds it possible to turn, metals of drossiest ore to perfect gold as from the mine. Meanwhile, at table Eve ministered naked, and their flowing cups with pleasant liquors crowned. O innocence deserving paradise! If ever then had the sons of God excuse to have been enamoured at that sight. But in those hearts love unlibidinness reigned, nor jealousy was understood, the injured lover's hell. Thus, when with meats and drinks they had sufficed, not burdened nature, sudden mind arose in Adam, not to let the occasion pass given him by this great conference, to know of things above his world, and of their being who dwell in heaven, whose excellence he saw transcend his own so far, whose radiant forms divine effulgence, whose high power so far exceeded human, and his wary speech thus to the imperial minister he framed. Inhabitant with God, now know I well thy favour in this honour done to man, under whose lowly roof thou hast vouchsafed to enter, and these earthly fruits to taste, food not of angels, yet accepted so, as that more willingly thou couldst not seem at heaven's feast to have fed, yet what compare? To whom the winged hierarch replied, O Adam, one Almighty is, from whom all things proceed, and up to him return, if not depraved from good, created all such to perfection. One first matter all, endued with various forms, various degrees of substance, and in things that live of life, but more refined, more spirituous and pure, as near to him placed or near tending, each in their several active spheres assigned, till body up to spirit work, in bounds proportioned to each kind. So from the root springs lighter the green stalk, from thence the leaves more airy, last the bright consummate flower spirits odorous breathes. Flowers and their fruit, man's nourishment, by gradual scale sublime to vital spirits aspire, to animal, to intellectual, give both life and sense, fancy and understanding, whence the soul reason receives, and reason is her being, discursive or intuitive. Discourse is oftenest yours, the latter most is ours, differing but in degree, of kind the same. Wonder not then what God for you saw good, if I refuse not, but convert as you to proper substance. Time may come when men with angels may participate, and find no inconvenient diet, nor too light fare. And from these corporeal nutriments perhaps your bodies may at last turn all to spirit, improved by tract of time, and winged ascend ethereal as we, or may at choice here or in heavenly paradises dwell. if ye be found obedient, and retain unalterably firm his love entire, whose progeny you are. Meanwhile, enjoy your fill what happiness this happy state can comprehend, incapable of more. To whom the patriarch of mankind replied, O favorable spirit, propitious guest, well hast thou taught the way that might direct our knowledge, and the scale of nature set from center to circumference, whereon in contemplation of created things, by steps we may ascend to God. But say, what meant that caution joined, if ye be found obedient? Can we want obedience then to him, or possibly his love desert, who formed us from the dust, and placed us here full to the utmost measure of what bliss human desires can seek or apprehend? To whom the angel, Son of heaven and earth, attend. That thou art happy, owe to God. That thou continuest such, owe to thyself, that is, to thy obedience. Therein stand. This was that caution given thee. Be advised. God made thee perfect, not immutable, and good he made thee, but to persevere he left it in thy power, ordained by thy will, by nature free, not o'erruled by fate inextricable or strict necessity. Our voluntary service he requires, not our necessitated. Such with him finds no acceptance, nor can find. For how can hearts not free be tried, whether they serve willing or no, who will but what they must by destiny, and can no other choose? Myself, and all the angelic host that stand in sight of God enthroned, our happy state hold as you yours, while our obedience holds. On other surety none. Freely we serve, because we freely love, as in our will to love or not. In this we stand or fall, and some are fallen, to disobedience fallen, and so from heaven to deepest hell. O fall from what high state of bliss into what woe! To whom our great progenitor, Thy words attentive, and with more delighted ear, divine instructor, I have heard, than when cherubic songs by night from the neighboring hills aerial music send. Nor knew I not to be both will and deed created free. Yet that we shall never forget to love our Maker, and obey him whose command single is yet so just, my constant thoughts assured me, and still assure. Though what thou tellest hath passed in heaven, some doubt within me move, but more desire to hear, if thou consent, the full relation, which must needs be strange, worthy of sacred silence to be heard. And we have yet large day, for scarce the sun hath finished half his journey, and scarce begins his other half in the great zone of heaven. Thus Adam made request, and Raphael, after short pause assenting, thus began. High matter thou enjoin'st me, O prime of men, sad task and hard, for how shall I relate to human sense the invisible exploits of warring spirits? How without remorse the ruin of so many glorious once and perfect while they stood? How last unfold the secrets of another world, perhaps not lawful to reveal? Yet for thy good, this is dispensed, and what surmounts the reach of human sense I shall delineate so, by likening spiritual to corporeal forms, and may express them best, though what if earth be but the shadow of heaven, and things therein each to other like, more than on earth is thought. As yet this world was not, and chaos wild reigned, where these heavens now roll, where earth now rests, upon her center poised, when on a day, for time, though in eternity, applied to motion, measures all things durable, by present, past, and future. On such day, as heaven's great year bring forth the imperial host of angels by imperial summons called, innumerable before the Almighty's throne, forthwith from all the ends of heaven appeared, under their hierarchs in orders bright, 10,000,000 ensigns high advanced, standards and gonfalons twixt van and rear, stream in the air, and for distinction served of hierarchies, of orders and degrees, or in their glittering tissues bear emblazoned holy memorials, acts of zeal and love recorded eminent. Thus when in orbs of circuit inexpressible they stood, orb within orb, the Father infinite, by whom in bliss embosomed sat the Son, amidst from a flaming mount whose top brightness had made invisible, thus spake. Hear, all ye angels, progeny of light, thrones, dominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, hear my decree, which unrevoked shall stand. This day I have begot whom I declare my only Son, And on this holy hill him have anointed, whom ye now behold at my right hand. Your head I him appoint, and by myself have sworn to him shall bow all knees in heaven, and shall confess him Lord. Under his great vice-regent reign abide, united as one individual soul, forever happy. Him who disobeys me disobeys, breaks union, and that day cast out from God and blessed vision, falls into utter darkness, deep engulfed, his place ordained without redemption, without end. So spake the Omnipotent, and with his words all seemed well pleased, all seemed, but were not all. That day, as other solemn days, they spent in song and dance about the sacred hill, mystical dance, which yonder starry sphere of planets, and affixed in all her wheels, resembles nearest, mazes intricate, eccentric, interrevolved, yet regular, then most when most irregular they seem. And in their motions harmony divine so smooths her charming tones that God's own ear listens delighted. Evening approached, for we have also our evening and our morn, we ours were changed delectable, not need. Forthwith from dance to sweet repast they turned, desirous all in circles as they stood. Tables are set, and on a sudden piled with angels' food, and rubied nectar flows. In pearl, in diamond, and massy gold, fruit of delicious vines, the growth of heaven. They eat, they drink, and with perfection sweet are filled before the all-bounteous King, who showered with copious hand, rejoicing in their joy. Now, when ambrosial night with clouds exhale from that high mount of God, whence light and shade spring both, the face of brightest heaven had changed to grateful twilight, for night comes not near in darker veil, and roseate dews disposed, all but the unsleeping eyes of God to rest, wide over all the plain, and wider far than all this globious earth in plain outspread. Such are the courts of God. The angelic throng dispersed in bands and files, their camp extend by living streams among the trees of life, pavilions numberless and sudden reared, celestial tabernacles where they slept, fanned with cool winds, save those who in their course melodious hymns about the sovereign throne alternate all night long. But not so waked Satan, so call him now, his former name is heard no more in heaven. He of the first, if not the first, archangel, great in power, in favor and preeminence, yet fought with envy against the Son of God, that day honored by his great Father, and proclaimed Messiah, King anointed, could not bear through pride that sight, and thought himself impaired. Deep malice thence conceiving in disdain, soon as midnight brought on the dusky hour, friendliest to sleep and silence, he resolved with all his legions to dislodge, and leave unworshipped, unobeyed the throne supreme, contemptuous, and his next subordinate awakening thus to him in secret spake. Sleepest thou, companion dear? What sleep can close thy eyelids? And rememberest what decree of yesterday so late hath passed the lips of heaven's Almighty? Thou to me thy thoughts wast wont, I mine to thee was wont to impart. Both waking we were one, how then can now thy sleep dissent? New laws thou seest imposed, new laws from him who reigns, new minds may raise in us who serve, new counsels, debate what doubtful may ensue, more in this place to utter is not safe. Assemble thou of all those myriads which we lead the chief, tell them that by command, ere yet dim night her shadowy cloud withdraws, I am to haste, and all who under me their banners wave, homeward with flying march where we possess the quarters of the north, there to prepare fit entertainment to receive our King, the great Messiah, and his new commands, who speedily through all the hierarchies intends to pass triumphant and give laws. So spake the false archangel, and infused bad influence into the unwary breast of his associate. He together calls, or several, one by one, the regent powers, under him regent, tells, as he was taught, that the Most High commanding, now ere night, now ere dim night, had disencumbered heaven, the great hierarchical standard was to move, tells the suggested cause, and casts between ambiguous words and jealousies the sound or taint integrity. But all obeyed the wonted signal and superior voice of their great potentate, for great indeed his name, and high was his degree in heaven, His countenance, as the morning star that guides the starry flock, allured them, and with lies drew after him the third part of heaven's host. Meanwhile the eternal eye, whose sight discerns abstrusest thoughts, from forth his holy mount, and from within the golden lamps that burned nightly before him, saw without the light rebellion rising, saw in whom, how spread among the sons of morn, what multitudes were banded to oppose his high decree, and smiling to his only Son, thus says, Son, thou in whom my glory I behold in full resplendence, heir of all my might, nearly it now concerns us to be sure of our omnipotence, and with what arms we mean to hold what anciently we claim of deity or emperor. Such a foe is rising who intends to erect his throne equal to ours throughout the spacious north, nor so content hath in his thought to try in battle what our power is or our right. Let us advise, and to this hazard draw with speed what force is left, and all employ in our defense, lest unawares we lose this our high place, our sanctuary, our hill. To whom the Son, with calm aspect and clear lightning divine, ineffable, serene, made answer, Mighty Father, thou thy foes justly hast in derision, and secure laughest at their vain designs and tumults vain, matter to me of glory, whom their hate illustrates, when they shall see all regal power given me to quell their pride, and event know whether I be dexterous to subdue thy rebels, or be found the worst in heaven. So spake the Son. But Satan with his powers far was advanced on winged speed, and host innumerable as the stars of night, or stars of morning, dewdrops which the sun imperils in every leaf and every flower. Regions they passed, the mighty regencies of seraphim and potentates and thrones, in their triple degrees, regions to which all thy dominion, Adam, is no more than what this garden is to all the earth and all the sea, from one entire globos stretched into longitude, which having passed at length into the limits of the north, they came, and Satan to his royal seat high on a hill, far blazing as a mount raised on a mount, with pyramids and towers, from diamond quarries hewn and rocks of gold, the palace of great Lucifer, so called that structure in the dialect of men interpreted, which not long after he, affecting all equality with God, in imitation of that mount whereon Messiah was declared in sight of heaven, the mountain of the congregation called. For thither he assembled all his train, pretending so commanded to consult about the great reception of their king, thither to come, and with calumnious art of counterfeited truth thus held their ears. Thrones, dominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, if these magnific titles yet remain not merely titular, since by decree another now hath to himself engrossed all power, and us eclipsed under the name of King Anointed, for whom all this haste of midnight march and hurried meeting here, this only to consult how we may best with what may be devised of honors new, receive him, coming to receive from us need tribute yet unpaid, prostration vile, too much to one, but double how endured to one and to his image now proclaimed. But what if better counsels might erect our minds to teach us to cast off this yoke? Will ye submit your necks and choose to bend your supple knee? Ye will not, if I trust to know ye right, or if ye know yourselves, natives and sons of heaven, possessed before by none, and if not equal all, yet free, equally free. For orders and degrees jar not with liberty, but well consist. Who can in reason then, or right, assume monarchy over such as live by right his equals, if in power and splendor less, in freedom equal, or can introduce law and edict upon us, who without law err not, much less for this to be our Lord, and look for adoration to the abuse of those imperial titles which assert our being ordained to govern, not to serve? Thus far his bold discourse without control had audience, when among the seraphim Abdiel, then whom none with more zeal adored the deity, and divine commands obeyed, stood up, and in a flame of zeal severe, the current of his fury thus opposed. O argument blasphemous, false and proud, word which no ear ever to hear in heaven expected, least of all from thee, ingrate, in place thyself so high above thy peers, Canst thou with impious obloquy condemn the just decree of God, pronounced and sworn, that to his only Son, by right endued with regal scepter, every soul in heaven shall bend the knee, and in that honor do confess him rightful King? Unjust, thou sayest, flatly unjust, to bind with laws the free, and equal over equals to let reign, one over all with unsucceeded power. Shalt thou give law to God? Shalt thou dispute with him the points of liberty, who made thee what thou art, and formed the powers of heaven, such as he pleased, and circumscribed their being? Yet by experience taught we know how good, and of our good, and of our dignity, how provident he is, how far from thought to make us less, bent rather to exalt our happy state under one head more near united. But to grant it thee unjust, that equal over equals monarch reign, thyself, though great and glorious, dost thou count, or all angelic nature joined in one, equal to him begotten Son, by whom, as by his word, the mighty Father made all things, even thee, and all the spirits of heaven by him created in their bright degrees, crowned them with glory, and to their glory named thrones, dominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, essential powers, nor by his reign obscured, but more illustrious made, since he, the head one of our number, thus reduced becomes, his laws our laws, all honor to him done returns our own. Cease then this impious rage, and tempt not these, but hasten to appease the incensed Father and the incensed Son, while pardon may be found in time besought. So spake the fervent angel, but his zeal none seconded, as out of season judged, or singular and rash, whereat rejoiced the apostate, and more haughty thus replied. That we were formed, then, sayest thou, and the work of secondary hands by task transferred from Father to his Son? Strange point, and new, doctrine which we would know whence learnt. Who saw when this creation was? Rememberest thou thy making, while the Maker gave thee being? We know no time when we were not as now. Know none before us, self-begot, self-raised by our own quickening power, when fatal course had circled his full orb, the birth mature of this our native heaven, ethereal sons. Our puissance is our own right hand shall teach us highest deeds, by proof to try who is our equal. Then thou shalt behold, whether by supplication we intend address, and to begirt the almighty throne, beseeching or besieging, this report, these tidings carry to the anointed King, and fly, ere evil intercept thy flight. He said, and as the sound of waters deep, hoarse murmur echoed to his words applause through the infinite host, nor less for that the flaming seraph fearless, though alone encompassed round with foes, thus answered bold. O alienate from God, O spirit accursed, forsaken of all good, I see thy fall determined, and thy hapless crew involved in this perfidious fraud, contagion spread both of thy crime and punishment. Henceforth no more be troubled how to quit the yoke of God's Messiah. Those indulgent laws will not now be vouchsafed. Other decrees against thee are gone forth without recall. That golden scepter which thou didst reject is now an iron rod to bruise and break thy disobedience. Well thou didst advise, yet not for thy advice or threats I fly, these wicked tents devoted, lest the wrath impendent, raging into sudden flame, distinguish not. For soon expect to feel his thunder on thy head, devouring fire. Then who created thee lamenting learn, when who can uncreate thee thou shalt know. So spake the seraph Abdiel, faithful found among the faithless, faithful only he, among innumerable false, unmoved, unshaken, unseduced, unterrified. His loyalty he kept, his love, his zeal. Nor numbers nor example with him wrought to swerve from truth or change his constant mind, though single. From amidst them forth he passed, long way through hostile scorn, which he sustained superior, nor of violence feared aught. And with retorted scorn his back he turned on those proud towers, to swift destruction doomed. End of Paradise Lost, Book 5, Part 2.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Rosalind Wills of Silver Spring, Maryland. Paradise Lost by John Milton. Book 6, Part 1. All night the dreadless angel unpursued through heaven's wide champaign held his way till morn, waked by the circling hours with rosy hand unbarred the gates of light. There is a cave within the mount of God fast by his throne, where light and darkness in perpetual round lodge and dislodge by turns, which makes through heaven grateful vicissitude like day and night. Light issues forth, and at the other door obsequious darkness enters, till her hour to veil the heaven, though darkness there might well seem twilight here. And now went forth the morn such as in highest heaven, arrayed in gold imperial, from before her vanished night, shot through with orient beams, when all the plain covered with thick embattled squadrons bright, chariots and flaming arms and fiery steeds reflecting blaze on blaze first met his view. War he perceived, war in prospect, and found already known what he for news had thought to have reported. Gladly then he mixed among those friendly powers who him received with joy and acclamations loud, that one that of so many myriads fallen, yet one returned not lost. On to the sacred hill they led him high applauded, and present before the seat supreme, from whence a voice from midst a golden cloud thus mild was heard. Servant of God, well done, well hast thou fought the better fight, who single hast maintained against revolted multitudes the cause of truth, in word mightier than they in arms, and for the testimony of truth hast borne universal reproach far worse to bear than violence, for this was all thy care to stand approved in sight of God, though worlds judge thee perverse. The easier conquest now remains thee, aided by this host of friends, back on thy foes more glorious to return than scorned thou didst depart, and to subdue by force who reason for their law refuse, right reason for their law and for their king, Messiah, who by right of merit reigns. Go, Michael of celestial armies prince, and thou in military prowess next, Gabriel, lead forth to battle these my sons invincible, lead forth my armed saints by thousands and by millions ranged for fight, equal in number to that godless crew rebellious, them with fire and hostile arms fearless assault, and to the brow of heaven pursuing, drive them out from God and bliss, into their place of punishment, the gulf of Tartarus, which ready opens wide his fiery chaos to receive their fall. So spake the sovereign voice, and clouds began to darken all the hill, and smoke to rowl in dusky wreaths, reluctant flames, the sign of wrath awaked, nor with less dread the loud ethereal trumpet from on high gan blow, at which command the powers militant, that stood for heaven in mighty quadrate joined of union irresistible, moved on in silence their bright legions to the sound of instrumental harmony that breathed heroic ardor to adventurous deeds, under their godlike leaders in the cause of God and his Messiah. On they move indissolubly firm, nor obvious hill nor straightening vale nor wood nor stream divides their perfect ranks, for high above the ground their march was, and the passive air upbore their nimble tread, as when the total kind of birds in orderly array on wing came summoned over Eden to receive their names of thee, so over many a tract of heaven they marched, and many a province wide, tenfold the length of this terrain. At last far in the horizon to the north appeared from skirt to skirt a fiery region, stretched, in battailious aspect and nearer view, bristled with upright beams innumerable of rigid spears and helmets thronged, and shields various with boastful argument portrayed. The banded powers of Satan hasting on with furious expedition, for they weened that self-same day by fight or by surprise to win the mount of God, and on his throne to set the envier of his state, the proud aspirer, but their thoughts proved fond and vain in the midway, though strange to us it seemed at first that angel should with angel war, and in fierce hosting meet who wont to meet so oft in festivals of joy and love unanimous, as sons of one great sire hymning the eternal Father. But the shout of battle now began, and rushing sound of onset ended soon each milder thought. High in the midst, exalted as a god, the apostate in his sun-bright chariot sate, idol of majesty divine, enclosed with flaming cherubim and golden shields, then lighted from his gorgeous throne, for now twixt host and host but narrow space was left. A dreadful interval, and front to front presented stood in terrible array of hideous length. Before the cloudy van on the rough edge of battle ere it joined, Satan with vast and haughty strides advanced, came towering armed in adamant and gold. Abdiel that sight endured not, where he stood among the mightiest, bent on highest deeds, and thus his own undaunted heart explores. O heaven, that such resemblance of the highest should yet remain where faith and realty remain not. Wherefore should not strength and might there fail where virtue fails, or weakest prove where boldest, though to sight unconquerable? His puissance trusting in the Almighty's aid I mean to try, whose reason I have tried, unsound and false. Nor is it aught but just that he who in debate of truth hath won should win in arms, in both disputes alike victor, though brutish that contest and foul. When reason hath to deal with force, yet so most reason is that reason overcome. So pondering, and from his armed peers forth stepping opposite, halfway he met his daring foe, at this prevention more incensed, and thus securely him defied. Proud art thou met? Thy hope was to have reached the height of thy aspiring unopposed, the throne of God unguarded, and his side abandoned at the terror of thy power or potent tongue. Fool, not to think how vain against the omnipotent to rise in arms, who out of smallest things could without end have raised incessant armies to defeat thy folly, or with solitary hand reaching beyond all limit, at one blow unaided could have finished thee and whelmed thy legions under darkness. But thou seest all are not of thy train. There be who faith prefer, and piety to God, though then to thee not visible, when I alone seemed in thy world erroneous to dissent from all. My sect thou seest, now learned too late how few sometimes may know when thousands err. Whom the grand foe with scornful eye askance thus answered, Ill for thee, but in wished hour of my revenge first sought, for thou return'st from flight, seditious angel, to receive thy merited reward, the first essay of this right hand provoked, since first that tongue inspired with contradiction durst oppose a third part of the gods, in synod met, their deities to assert, who while they feel vigour divine within them can allow omnipotence to none. But well thou comest before thy fellows, ambitious to win from me some plume, that thy success may show destruction to the rest. This pause between, unanswered least thou boast, to let thee know, at first I thought that liberty and heaven to heavenly souls had been all one, but now I see that most through sloth had rather served. Ministering spirits trained up in feast and song, such hast thou armed the minstrelsy of heaven, servility with freedom to contend, as both their deeds compared this day shall prove. To whom in brief thus Abdiel stern replied, Apostat still thou errest, nor end will find of erring from the path of truth remote. Unjustly thou depravest it with the name of servitude, to serve whom God ordains, or nature. God and nature bid the same, when he who rules is worthiest and excels them whom he governs. This is servitude, to serve the unwise, or him that hath rebelled against his worthier, as thine now serve thee, thyself not free, but to thyself enthralled, yet lewdly darest our ministering upbraid. Reign thou in hell thy kingdom, let me serve in heaven God ever blessed, and his divine behests obey, worthiest to be obeyed. Yet chains in hell, not realms, expect. Meanwhile from me returned, as erst thou saidst, from flight, this greeting on thy impious crest receive. So saying, a noble stroke he lifted high, which hung not, but so swift with tempest fell on the proud crest of Satan, that no sight nor motion of swift thought, less could his shield such ruin intercept. 10 paces huge he back recoiled, the 10th on bended knee his massy spear upstayed, as if on earth winds underground or waters forcing way sidelong had pushed a mountain from his seat, half sunk with all his pines. Amazement seized the rebel thrones, but greater rage to see thus spoiled their mightiest. Ours joy filled and shout, presage of victory and fierce desire of battle. Whereat Michael bid sound the archangel trumpet. Through the vast of heaven it sounded, and the faithful armies rung Hosanna to the highest. nor stood at gaze the adverse legions, nor less hideous joined the horrid shock. Now storming fury rose, and clamour such as heard in heaven till now was never. Arms on armour clashing brayed horrible discord, and the madding wheels of brazen chariots raged. Dire was the noise of conflict. Overhead the dismal hiss of fiery darts in flaming volleys flew, and flying bolted either host with fire. Sounder fiery cope together rushed both battles main, with ruinous assault and inextinguishable rage. All heaven resounded, and had earth been then, all earth had to her centre shook. What wonder, when millions of fierce encountering angels fought on either side, the least of whom could weld these elements and arm him with the force of all their regions? How much more of power army against army numberless to raise dreadful combustion warring, and disturb though not destroy their happy native seat? Had not the eternal King omnipotent from his stronghold of heaven high o'erruled and limited their might, though numbered such as each divided legion might have seemed a numerous host, in strength each armed hand a legion, led in fight, yet leader seemed each warrior single as in chief, expert when to advance or stand or turn the sway of battle, open when and when to close the bridges of grim war. No thought of flight, none of retreat, no unbecoming deed that argued fear. Each on himself relied, as only in his arm the moment lay of victory. Deeds of eternal fame were done, but infinite, for wide was spread that war and various, sometimes on firm ground a standing fight, then soaring on main wing tormented all the air. All air seemed then conflicting fire. Long time in even scale the battle hung, till Satan, who that day prodigious power had shown, and met in arms no equal, ranging through the dire attack of fighting seraphim confused, at length saw where the sword of Michael smote, and felled squadrons at once with huge two-handed sway, brandished aloft the horrid edge came down wide wasting, such destruction to withstand he hasted, and opposed the rocky orb of tenfold adamant, his ample shield of vast circumference. At his approach the great archangel from his warlike toil surceased, and glad as hoping here to end intestine war in heaven, the arch-foe subdued or captive dragged in chains, with hostile frown and visage all inflamed, first thus began. Author of evil, unknown till thy revolt, unnamed in heaven, now plenteous as thou seest these acts of hateful strife, hateful to all, though heaviest by just measure on thyself and thy adherents. How hast thou disturbed heaven's blessed peace, and into nature brought misery uncreated till the crime of thy rebellion? How hast thou instilled thy malice into thousands, once upright and faithful, now proved false? But think not here to trouble holy rest. Heaven casts thee out from all her confines. Heaven, the seed of bliss, brooks not the works of violence and war. Hence, then, and evil go with thee along, thy offspring, to the place of evil, hell, thou and thy wicked crew. There mingle broils ere this avenging sword begin thy doom, or some more sudden vengeance winged from God precipitate thee with augmented pain. So spake the Prince of Angels, to whom thus the adversary: Nor think thou with wind of airy threats to all whom yet with deeds thou canst not. Hast thou turned the least of these to flight, or if to fall, but that they rise unvanquished, easier to transact with me than thou shouldst hope, imperious and with threats to chase me hence? Ere not that so shall end the strife which thou call'st evil, but we style the strife of glory, which we mean to win or turn this heaven itself into the hell thou fablest, here however to dwell free if not to reign, meanwhile thy utmost force, and join him named Almighty to thy aid. I fly not, but have sought thee far and nigh. They ended parley, and both addressed for fight unspeakable, for who, though with the tongue of angels can relate, or to what things liken on earth conspicuous, that may lift human imagination to such height of godlike power? For likest gods they seemed, stood they or moved, in stature, motion, arms fit to decide the empire of great heaven. Now waved their fiery swords, and in the air made horrid circles. Two broad suns their shields blazed opposite, while expectation stood in horror. From each hand with speed retired where erst was thickest fight, the angelic throng, and left large field unsafe within the wind of such commotion, such as to set forth great things by small, if nature's concord broke, Among the constellations war were sprung, 2 planets rushing from aspect malign of fiercest opposition in mid-sky should combat, and their jarring spheres confound. Together both with next to almighty arm uplifted imminent one stroke they aimed that might determine and not need repeat, as not of power at once, nor odds appeared in might or swift prevention, but the sword of Michael from the armoury of God was given him tempered so that neither keen nor solid might resist that edge. It met the sword of Satan with steep force to smite descending, and in half cut sheer, nor stayed, but with swift wheel reverse, deep entering shared all his right side. Then Satan first knew pain, and writhed him to and fro convolved, so sore the grinding sword with discontinuous wound passed through him. But the ethereal substance closed not long divisible, and from the gash a stream of nectarous humour issuing flowed sanguine, such as celestial spirits may bleed, and all his armour stained erewhile so bright. Forthwith on all sides to his aid was run by angels many and strong, who interposed defence, while others bore him on their shields back to his chariot, where it stood retired from off the files of war. There they him laid, gnashing for anguish and despite and shame, to find himself not matchless, and his pride humbled by such a rebuke, so far beneath his confidence to equal God in power. Yet soon he healed, for spirits that live throughout vital in every part, not as frail man in entrails, heart or head, liver or rinds, cannot but by annihilating die, nor in their liquid texture mortal wound received, no more than can the fluid air. All heart they live, all head, all eye, all ear, all intellect, all sense, and as they please they limn themselves, and colour, shape, or size, assume as likes them best, condense or rare. Meanwhile in other parts like deeds deserved memorial, where the might of Gabriel fought, and with fierce ensigns pierced the deep array of Moloch, furious king, who him defied, and at his chariot wheels to drag him bound threatened, nor from the Holy One of heaven refrained his tongue blasphemous, but anon down cloven to the waist, with shattered arms and uncouth pain fled bellowing. On each wing Uriel and Raphael his vaunting foe, though huge and in a rock of diamond armed, vanquished Adramelech and Asmodai, 2 potent thrones, that to be less than gods disdain, but meaner thoughts learned in their flight, mangled with ghastly wounds through plate and mail. Nor stood unmindful Abdiel to annoy the atheist crew, but with redoubled blow Ariel and Arioch, and the violence of Ramiel scorched and blasted overthrew. I might relate of thousands, and their names eternize here on earth, but those elect angels contented with their fame in heaven seek not the praise of men. The other soared in might, though wondrous and in acts of war, nor of renown less eager, yet by doom cancelled from heaven and sacred memory. Nameless in dark oblivion let them dwell. For strength from truth divided and from just, illaudable not merits but dispraise and ignominy, yet to glory aspires vain glorious, and through infamy seeks fame, therefore eternal silence be their doom. And now their mightiest quelled, the battle swerved, with many an inroad gored, deformed rout entered, and foul disorder, all the ground with shivered armour strown, and on a heap chariot and charioteer lay overturned, and fiery foaming steeds, what stood recoiled or wearied, through the faint satanic host defensive scarce, or with pale fear surprised. Then first with fear surprised and sense of pain fled ignominious, to such evil brought by sin of disobedience, till that hour not liable to fear or flight or pain. Far otherwise the inviolable saints in cubic phalanx firm advanced entire, invulnerable, impenetrably armed, such high advantages their innocence gave them above their foes, not to have sinned, not to have disobeyed. In fight they stood unwearied, unobnoxious to be pained by wound, though from their place by violence moved. End of Book 6, Part 1.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eric Ray, St. Louis, Missouri. Paradise Lost by John Milton. Book 6, Part 2. Now night her course began, and over heaven inducing darkness, grateful truce imposed, and silence on the odious din of war. Under her cloudy covert both retired, victor and vanquished. On the foughten field, Michael and his angels prevalent encamping, placed in guard their watches round, cherubic waving fires. On other parts Satan with his rebellious disappeared, far in the dark dislodged, and void of rest, his potentate to council called by night, and in the mist thus undismayed began. Oh, now in danger tried, now known in arms not to be overpowered, companions dear, found worthy not of liberty alone, too mean pretense, but what we more affect, honor, dominion, glory, and renown, who have sustained one day in doubtful fight, and if one day, why not eternal days? What heaven's Lord had powerfulest to send against us from about his throne, and judged sufficient to subdue us to his will, but proves not so. Then fallible it seems of future we may deem him, though till now omniscient thought. True is, less firmly armed, some disadvantage we endured, and pain, till now not known, but known as soon contemned. Since now we find this our imperial form, incapable of mortal injury, imperishable, and though pierced with wounds soon closing, and by native vigor healed. Of evil then, so small as easy think the remedy, perhaps more valid arms, weapons more violent when next we meet, may serve to better us and worse our foes, or equal what between us made the odds in nature none. If other hidden cause left them superior, while we can preserve unhurt our minds and understanding sound, due search and consultation will disclose. He sat, and in the assembly next up stood Nisroch of principalities the prime. As one he stood, escaped from cruel fight, sore toiled, his riven arms to havoc hewn, and cloudy in aspect thus answering spake. Deliverer from new lords, leader to free enjoyment of our right as gods, yet hard for gods, and too unequal work we find, against unequal arms to fight in pain, against unpained impassive, from which evil ruin must needs ensue. For what avails valor or strength, though matchless, quelled with pain which all subdues, and makes remiss the hands of mightiest? Sense of pleasure we may well spare out of life perhaps, and not repine, but live content, which is the calmest life. But pain is perfect misery, the worst of evils, and excessive overturns all patience. He who therefore can invent with what more forcible we may offend our yet unwounded enemies, or arm ourselves with like defense, to me deserves no less than for deliverance what we owe. Whereto with look composed Satan replied, Not uninvented that which thou aright believ'st so main to our success I bring. Which of us who beholds the bright surface of this ethereous mold whereon we stand, this continent of spacious heaven, adorned with plant, fruit, flower ambrosial, gems and gold, whose eye so superficially surveys these things, as not to mind from whence they grow deep underground, materials dark and crude, of spirituous and fiery spume, till touched with heaven's ray and tempered, they shoot forth so beauteous, opening to the ambient light. These in their dark nativity the deep shall yield us, pregnant with infernal flame, which into hollow engines long and round, thick rammed, at th'other bore with touch of fire, dilated and infuriate, shall send forth from far with thundering noise among our foes, such implements of mischief as shall dash to pieces, and o'erwhelm whatever stands at first, that they shall fear we have disarmed the thunderer of his only dreaded bolt. Nor long shall be our labor, yet ere dawn effect shall end our wish. Meanwhile revive, abandon fear, to strength and counsel joined think nothing hard, much less to be despaired. He ended, and his words their drooping cheer enlightened, and their languished hope revived. The invention all admired, and each how he to be the inventor missed, so easy it seemed once found, which yet unfound most would have thought impossible. Yet haply of thy race in future days, if malice should abound, someone intent on mischief or inspired with devilish machination might devise like instrument to plague the sons of men for sin, on war and mutual slaughter bent. Forthwith from council to the work they flew, none arguing stood, innumerable hands were ready. In a moment up they turned wide the celestial soil, and saw beneath the originals of nature in their crude conception. Sulphurous and nitrous foam they found, they mingled, and with subtle art concocted and adjusted they reduced to blackest grain, and into store conveyed. Part hidden veins digged up, nor hath this earth entrails unlike, of mineral and stone, whereof to found their engines and their balls of missive ruin. Part incentive reed provide, pernicious with one touch to fire. So all ere dayspring under conscious night secret they finished, and in order set, with silent circumspection unespied. Now when fair morn orient in heaven appeared, up rose the victor angels, and to arms the matin trumpet sung. In arms they stood of golden panoply, refulgent host, soon banded. Others from the dawning hills looked round, and scouts each coast light-armed scour, each quarter to descry the distant foe, where lodged, or whither fled, or if for fight, in motion or in alt. Him soon they met under spread ensigns moving nigh, in slow but firm battalion. Back with speediest sail Zephiel, of cherubim the swiftest wing came flying, and in mid-air aloud thus cried, Arm, warriors, arm for fight, the foe at hand whom fled we thought, will save us long pursuit this day, fear not his flight. So thick a cloud he comes, and settled in his face I see sad resolution and secure. Let each his adamantine coat gird well, and each fit well his helm. Grip fast his orbed shield, borne even or high, for this day will pour down, if I conjecture aught, no drizzling shower, but rattling storm of arrows barbed with fire. So warned he them aware themselves, and soon in order quit of all impediment. Instant without disturb they took alarm, and onward move in battle, when behold, not distant far, with heavy pace the foe approaching, gross and huge. In hollow cube, training his devilish enginery, impaled on every side with shadowing squadrons deep to hide the fraud. At interview both stood a while, but suddenly at head appeared Satan, and thus was heard commanding loud, Vanguard, to right and left the front unfold, that all may see who hate us, how we seek peace and composure, and with open breast stand ready to receive them, if they like our overture and turn not back perverse. But that I doubt, however witness heaven. Heaven, witness thou anon, while we discharge freely our part. Ye who appointed stand, do as you have in charge, and briefly touch what we propound, and loud that all may hear. So scoffing in ambiguous words, he scarce had ended, when to right and left the front divided and to either flank retired, which to our eyes discovered new and strange, a triple-mounted row of pillars laid on wheels, for like to pillars most they seemed, or hollowed bodies made of oak or fir with branches lopped, in wood or mountain felled. Brass, iron, stony mold had not their mouths with hideous orifice gaped on us wide, portending hollow truce. At each behind a seraph stood, and in his hand a reed stood waving, tipped with fire, while we suspense, collected, stood within our thoughts amused. Not long, for sudden, all at once, their reeds put forth, and to a narrow vent applied with nicest touch. Immediate in a flame, but soon obscured with smoke, all heaven appeared from those deep-throated engines belched, whose roar emboweled with outrageous noise the air, and all her entrails tore, disgorging foul their devilish glut, chained thunderbolts and hail of iron globes, which on the victor host levelled, with such impetuous fury smote, that whom they hit, none on their feet might stand, though standing else as rocks, but down they fell by thousands, angel on archangel rolled, the sooner for their arms. Unarmed they might have easily as spirits evaded swift by quick contraction or remove. But now foul dissipation followed, and forced rout. Nor served it to relax their serried fires. What should they do? If on they rushed, repulse repeated, and indecent overthrow doubled would render them yet more despised, and to their foes a laughter. For in view stood ranked of seraphim, another row in posture to displode their second tire of thunder. Back defeated to return, they worse abhorred. Satan beheld their plight, and to his mates thus in derision called, O friends, why come not on these victors proud, ere while they fierce were coming, and when we to entertain them fair with open front and breast, what could we more? Propounded terms of composition, straight they changed their minds, flew off, and into strange vagaries fell, as they would dance, yet for a dance they seemed somewhat extravagant and wild, perhaps for joy of offered peace. But I suppose if our proposals once again were heard, we should compel them to a quick result. To whom thus Belial in like gamesome mood, Leader, the terms we sent were terms of weight, of hard contents, and full of force urged home, such as we might perceive amused them all, and stumbled many who receives them right, had need from head to foot well understand. Not understood, this gift they have besides, they show us when our foes walk not upright. So they among themselves in pleasant vein stood scoffing, heightened in their thoughts beyond all doubt of victory, eternal might to match with their inventions they presumed so easy, and of his thunder made a scorn, and all his host derided while they stood a while in trouble. But they stood not long, rage prompted them at length, and found them arms against such hellish mischief fit to oppose. Forthwith, behold the excellence, the power which God hath in his mighty angels placed. Their arms away they threw, and to the hills, for earth hath this variety from heaven of pleasures situate in hill and dale. Light as the lightning glimpse they ran, they flew, from their foundations loosening to and fro, they plucked the seated hills with all their load, rocks, waters, woods, and by the shaggy tops uplifting, bore them in their hands. Amaze, be sure, and terror seized the rebel host, when coming towards them so dread they saw the bottom of the mountains upward turned, till on those cursed engines triple row they saw them whelmed, and all their confidence under the weight of mountains buried deep. Themselves invaded next, and on their heads main promontories flung, which in the air came shadowing, and oppressed whole legions armed. Their armor helped their harm, crushed in and bruised into their substance pent, which wrought them pain implacable, and many a dolorous groan, long struggling underneath, ere they could wind out of such prison, though spirits of purest light. Purest at first, now gross by sinning grown. The rest in imitation to like arms betook them, and the neighboring hills uptore. So hills amid the air encountered hills, hurled to and fro with ejaculation dire, that underground they fought in dismal shade, infernal noise. War seemed a civil game to this uproar. Horrid confusion heaped upon confusion rose, and now all heaven had gone to wrack, with ruin overspread, had not the Almighty Father, where he sits shrined in his sanctuary of heaven secure, consulting on the sum of things, foreseen this tumult, and permitted all, advised, that his great purpose he might so fulfill, to honor his anointed Son avenged upon his enemies, and to declare all power on him transferred, whence to his Son, the assessor of his throne, he thus began. Effulgence of my glory, Son beloved, Son in whose face invisible is beheld visibly what by deity I am, and in whose hand what by decree I do, second omnipotence, 2 days are past. 2 days as we compute the days of heaven, since Michael and his powers went forth to tame these disobedient. Sore hath been their fight, as likeliest was when 2 such foes met armed. For to themselves I left them, and thou know'st, equal in their creation they were formed, save what sin hath impaired, which yet hath wrought insensibly, for I suspend their doom, whence in perpetual fight they needs must last endless, and no solution will be found. War wearied hath performed what war can do, and to disordered rage let loose the reins, with mountains as with weapons armed, which makes wild work in heaven, and dangerous to the main. 2 days are therefore past, the third is thine. For thee I have ordained it, and thus far have suffered, that the glory may be thine of ending this great war, since none but thou can end it. Into thee such virtue and grace immense I have transfused, that all may know in heaven and hell thy power above compare, and this perverse commotion governed thus, to manifest thee worthiest to be heir of all things, to be heir and to be king by sacred unction, thy deserved right. Go then, thou mightiest in thy father's might, ascend my chariot, guide the rapid wheels that shake heaven's basis, bring forth all my war, my bow and thunder, my almighty arms gird on, and sword upon thy puissant thigh. Pursue these sons of darkness, drive them out from all heaven's bounds into the utter deep. There let them learn as likes them to despise God and Messiah his anointed King. He said, and on his son with rays direct shone full, he all his father full expressed ineffably into his face received, and thus the filial Godhead answering spake. O Father, O supreme of heavenly thrones, first, highest, holiest, best, thou always seek'st to glorify thy Son, I always thee as is most just. This I my glory account, my exaltation and my whole delight, that thou in me well pleased declarest thy will fulfilled, which to fulfill is all my bliss. Scepter and power thy giving I assume, and gladlier shall resign, when in the end thou shalt be all in all, and I in thee forever, and in me all whom thou lovest. But whom thou hatest, I hate, and can put on thy terrors as I put thy mildness on, image of thee in all things, and shall soon, armed with thy might, rid heaven of these rebelled, to their prepared ill mansion driven down to chains of darkness, and the undying worm that from thy just obedience could revolt, whom to obey is happiness entire. Then shall thy saints unmixed, and from them pure far separate, circling thy holy mount, unfeigned hallelujahs to thee sing, hymns of high praise, and I among them chief. So said, he o'er his scepter bowing rose from the right hand of glory where he sate, and the third sacred morn began to shine dawning through heaven. Forth rushed with whirlwind sound the chariot of paternal deity, flashing thick flames, wheel within wheel, undrawn, itself instinct with spirit, but convoyed by 4 cherubic shapes. 4 faces each had wondrous, as with stars their bodies all and wings were set with eyes the wheels of beryl, and careering fires between. Over their heads a crystal firmament, whereon a sapphire throne, inlaid with pure amber and colors of the showery arch. He in celestial panoply, all armed of radiant Urim, work divinely wrought, ascended. At his right hand victory sate eagle-winged. Beside him hung his bow and quiver, with 3-bolted thunder stored. And from about him fierce effusion rolled of smoke, and bickering flame, and sparkles dire, attended with 10,000 saints. He onward came, far off his coming shone, and 20,000, I their number heard, chariots of God, half on each hand were seen. He on the wings of cherub rode sublime on the crystalline sky, in sapphire throne, illustrious far and wide, but by his own first seen. Then unexpected joy surprised, when the great ensign of Messiah blazed aloft by angels borne, his sign in heaven, under whose conduct Michael soon reduced his army, circumfused on either wing, under their head embodied all in one. Before him, power divine his way prepared. At his command, the uprooted hills retired each to his place. They heard his voice and went obsequious. Heaven his wonted face renewed, and with fresh florets hill and valley smiled. This saw his hapless foes, but stood obdured, and to rebellious fight rallied their powers insensate, hope conceiving from despair. In heavenly spirits could such perverseness dwell? But to convince the proud, what signs avail or wonders move the obdurate to relent? They hardened more by what might most reclaim, grieving to see his glory, at the sight took envy, and aspiring to his height, stood re-embattled fierce, by force or fraud weening to prosper, and at length prevail against God and Messiah, or to fall in universal ruin last, and now to final battle drew, disdaining flight or faint retreat, when the great Son of God to all his host on either hand thus spake. Stand still in bright array, ye saints. Here stand ye angels armed, this day from battle rest. Faithful hath been your warfare, and of God accepted, fearless in his righteous cause, and as ye have received, so have ye done invincibly. But of this cursed crew the punishment to other hand belongs. Vengeance is his, or whose he sole appoints. Number to this day's work is not ordained, nor multitude. Stand only and behold God's indignation on these godless poured by me. Not you, but me they have despised, yet envied. Against me is all their rage, because the Father, to whom in heaven supreme kingdom and power and glory appertains, hath honored me according to his will. Therefore to me their doom he hath assigned, that they may have their wish, to try with me in battle which the stronger proves, they all, or I alone against them, since by strength they measure all, of other excellence not emulous, nor care who them excels, nor other strife with them do I vouchsafe. So spake the Son, and into terror changed his countenance, too severe to be beheld, and full of wrath bent on his enemies. At once the four spread out their starry wings, with dreadful shade contiguous, and the orbs of his fierce chariot rolled, as with the sound of torrent floods or of a numerous host. He on his impious foes right onward drove, gloomy as night. Under his burning wheels the steadfast Empyrean shook throughout, all but the throne itself of God. Full soon among them he arrived, in his right hand grasping 10,000 thunders, which he sent before them, such as in their souls infixed plagues. They, astonished, all resistance lost, all courage. Down their idle weapons dropped. O'er shields and helms and helmed heads he rode, of thrones and mighty seraphim prostrate, that wished the mountains now might be again thrown on them, as a shelter from his ire. Nor less on either side tempestuous fell his arrows, from the fourfold-visaged four distinct with eyes, and from the living wheels distinct alike with multitude of eyes. One spirit in them ruled, and every eye glared lightning, and shot forth pernicious fire among the accursed, that withered all their strength, and of their wonted vigor left them drained, exhausted, spiritless, afflicted, fallen. Yet half his strength he put not forth, but checked his thunder in mid-volley, for he meant not to destroy, but root them out of heaven. The overthrown he raised, and as a herd of goats or timorous flock together thronged, drove them before him thunderstruck, pursued with terrors and with furies to the bounds and crystal wall of heaven, which opening wide rolled inward, and a spacious gap disclosed into the wasteful deep. The monstrous sight struck them with horror backward, but far worse urged them behind. Headlong themselves they threw down from the verge of heaven. Eternal wrath burnt after them to the bottomless pit. Hell heard the unsufferable noise. Hell saw heaven ruining from heaven, and would have fled affrighted, but strict fate had cast too deep her dark foundations, and too fast had bound. 9 days they fell, confounded chaos roared, and felt tenfold confusion in their fall through his wild anarchy, so huge a rout encumbered him with ruin. Hell at last yawning received them whole, and on them closed, Hell their fit habitation, fraught with fire unquenchable, the house of woe and pain. Disburdened, heaven rejoiced, and soon repaired her mural breach, returning whence it rolled. Sole victor from the expulsion of his foes, Messiah his triumphal chariot turned. To meet him all his saints who silent stood, eyewitness of his almighty acts, with jubilee advanced. And as they went, shaded with branching palm, each order bright sung triumph, and hymn sung victorious King, Son, Heir, and Lord, to him dominion given, worthiest to reign. He celebrated, rode triumphant through mid-heaven, into the courts and temple of his mighty Father throned on high, who into glory him received, where now he sits at the right hand of bliss. Thus measuring things in heaven by things on earth at thy request, and that thou mayest beware by what is past, to thee I have revealed what might else to human race been hid, the discord which befell, and war in heaven among the angelic powers, and the deep fall of those too high aspiring, who rebelled with Satan, he who envies now thy state, who now is plotting how he may seduce thee also from obedience, that with him, bereaved of happiness, thou mayst partake his punishment, eternal misery, which would be all his solace and revenge, as a despite done against the Most High, thee once to gain companion of his woe. But listen not to his temptations, warn thy weakling. Let it profit thee to have heard by terrible example the reward of disobedience. Firm they might have stood, yet fell. Remember, and fear to transgress. End of Book 6, Part 2.